the main cam. There we go. Perfect. I've got to switch. That's why I have to do that. Cool. Sorry, chat. Give me 1 second. We'll do the intro here just a second. Just got to make sure everything's fine-tuned. Keep making adjustments. Keep making things better. Except for the camera. I can't get the camera to stop autofocusing. All right. Everything's good. Get a good intro this time. All right. Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 33rd live stream from the MisfitGamersStudios. I'm your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. Today we have some fun topics. We have some homebrew items coming from Kage's gaming group, so that's going to be a lot of fun to hear from that. I think there are homebrew spells that we have coming down the line, so we're going to at least do the most complicated one first. We'll see how long that takes us. I can say those words. And depending on how long that takes us, we have a couple other quick ones that we'll like rapid fire, and then we're going to actually get into our topic that we kind of skipped last week, which was the topic on weather, weather in games, in terms of how do we use it, whether it should be used, if it's beneficial, and then we're talking about whether out of combat, in combat, during travel, basically kind of covering that whole topic. We really didn't get to it last week, so we want to cover it this week. So I'm going to bring Kage into the studio now. We're going to get him set up because he has a couple of his player spells to bring us. So let's bring him in and get him unmuted. Welcome, Kage. Welcome back.
Well, what's going on, friends and neighbors? Good to be back. Very excited to be sharing with you guys this week. But yeah.
Yeah.
33rd.
Yeah, 33 episodes over 5 months now. 5 months, almost 6 months.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going strong. I kind of not surprised that I made it this far, but pleasantly surprised, I guess. Like I wasn't expecting that I would decline that quickly, but it crept up very quickly. Like
right.
it's just like wow, it's been a while.
It's here already. All right.
Episode 100 is gonna just hit me, so I'm not going to be prepared.
Right.
I want to do something nice. Like I know we're probably not gonna have. It would be cool to be affiliate by episode 100. I mean that's probably another.
Come on, man.
Well, I mean you got to think that's at least almost another year, if you know, because I mean we've done 30 episodes over 5 months, so I mean we're gonna have to do that 2 more times.
Yeah.
So maybe this time next year we'll do episode 100. We'll have to hopefully. I won't be prepared because I'll forget. Maybe we'll be affiliate by that time, so we'll have like a subathon. That would be great if we can make affiliate.
Genius.
By episode 100, it will be a subathon. We'll do it. Maybe we'll switch the day. We'll try to do it like on a weekend or something, and then we'll literally just do like a 12-hour or like a 10-hour subathon or something. Just do a whole day thing where we just like do nothing but homebrews. Or maybe we actually game that day. We'll probably be gaming on stream by that time.
That would be great.
What's going on, Cosmic? Nice to see you in chat again. Thank you for sending that over. If we have some time after the topic, we can go over the character backstory. If not, I can go ahead and read that on Thursday. I'm still debating on whether or not I should continue on Thursdays. I do want a second day to do things like deep dives. Like I really enjoyed last week doing the origin story of High Point. I really want to do a second part where I kind of talk about more of the development after the fact. But I think I did. You watched at least part of it, right?
I definitely started it. I know you and I have talked a little bit off camera about a lot of this beforehand and since, but the getting to like understand like the core of like where everything comes from, it really gives so much more life. Like gaming in your world, it makes an entire world of difference because then the colors are more vibrant in the world.
Right. But things make a lot more sense, or at least I feel like the layers make it more appreciable, right?
Yes.
It's one thing to just be walking through a town or meet an NPC, but to understand the layers that went, and again, not the work. We're not necessarily talking about the hours and the days of work and all of that, but the layers of when you can see how an important NPC or a notable figure got to where that was. That's where that's like listening to Cosmic's world. Those are what we're talking about. We're not talking about someone who said, I spent 300 hours writing a novel about my thing. Like, that's not what I'm interested in, because I've done that. I've had DMs that will write paragraphs upon paragraphs, and it's beautifully written, but it's not enticing, and it's not how I want to digest the information. Whereas building layers that not only make sense, but building layers of intrigue as well as answers, because anybody can make something vague, or anyone can make something mysterious. Anybody can make something that makes people want to question it. But to make something intriguing, make something that makes you want to pick at it more and more, but every time you pick, you get the satisfaction, but the drive to continue. It's like you always get that desire to pick paint. Right? And it's nice when you pick off the piece that you wanted in the perfect shape, but then imagine there's another color underneath that's chipping, and then you're like, well, I can get that color.
They've been making these TikTok videos like that all the time now. It's
so
ridiculous.
I'm saying, like, that to me is what I talk about when I talk about the beauty of layering. I can appreciate a world more when the layers are there to not only make things make sense. Like, again, so using Cosmic's example, because we've talked about that the most on stream. The idea behind, it's one thing to say the universe was created by a goddess.
Right.
But to have the layers of that goddess's scales represent every creature. And the fact that you put in that the universe doesn't have to exist because she exists, she can die. The fact that you put in the layer of not just she's trapped, you put in how she's trapped, how to get her out, what the reward is for getting her out, what the consequences of our
required to get her out, and how they play into how she was trapped in the first place.
Right. And then the optional ability to go beyond, like, those are the layers we're talking about. Whether that was an hour of your time or 5 years, it doesn't matter. The idea is that you're like, oh, a goddess is trapped, like, that's kind of intriguing. And then you're like, oh wait, there's 7 chains and you have to break all of them. So we could just break the chain. Wait, there's a tower at each chain? Okay, I'm picking, right? Wait. It's not just a tower. There's a magical item at the end of it. Oh, I want that magical item. Oh, wait, I get to keep it. Oh, but if I want to, I have to destroy it if I want to save her. And then you're like, oh wait, should I hold on to it to do the other ones, or should I destroy it first, right? Like, because then there's the mindfuck of, as you destroy each chain, do the other ones get stronger and harder? Should you hold on to each item before? And then once you have all the items, do you want to give them all up? Like, these are the layers that make a lot of fun versus just, you could have put 5 years into an amazing backstory of the royals and why they're royal and blah, 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 and why they hired you and why all of this. But if the gameplay is you going through, encounter after encounter, and all of that lore was backed up on the person who gave you the job, what's there to pick at? Right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's all this beautiful lore about the person who said, go kill that person. And it's like, cool. Why do I need to kill that person? Oh, well, you see, the person that sent you, and it's like, I know about the person that sent me, but, like, what's ahead of me? It's like, when you put all of it in an area that's not designed for the player to interact with, it's not layered properly. Yeah. You could have put all that beautiful work in, but where is it for the player? You know what I mean? And there's a difference too between what players are we talking about. Are you trying to entice new players, or are you trying to keep the attention of your current players, right? And I think that's also a big deal. I know we're getting off topic here, but that's how this thing works. But that's another I think really interesting aspect of watching people build their realm, because you have some people building a realm just for, like, their campaign, that gaming group. Then you have other people who are building it for trying to, like, make it something, right? Make it enticing for other people to want to try in multiple ways, like a module. A module is designed to be played by multiple people, whereas there's other gaming groups that are like, I'm just trying to keep my gaming group going. And then there are other people who just want to try new things, constantly want to try something different, or be in different gaming groups. I like to think I'm in like in between, trying to keep my current players enticed, because of course it's your guys' main game, so of course I want to keep you guys around. But it's also, I think, inherently available to the right person that mine is also intriguing on that fact, because I put so much effort into my current players. If it intrigues someone to come in, you become my current player, which means I put all that effort into you. So I think part of the drive, or part of the appeal of my world to some people, and again, I'm not saying that I have the most appealing type of game style, but I think the reason why those that are attracted to it is because they see the personableness of it. They see how not just the interactiveness of how I play, but they see how much of their actions go into it, how much of their character becomes part of the world. And I think that's intriguing to a lot of people, instead of feeling like you are experiencing a virtual reality movie where it's like you're interacting with it, but it's in a set. Whereas with mine, it's more like you're actually in something that's actually interacting.
It's choose your own adventure, and more like you're the actual actor who gets to make actual choices.
Exactly. I used to think that choose your own adventure was a good idea to explain it, but that's not really right, because choose your own adventure would mean multiple choice, which is also, I think, a very great way to also try DMing too, which I don't see a lot, is the choose your own adventure or multiple choice gameplay.
Especially starting off.
Right? Yeah. Where as a DM, you can have the open world concept like we do, which isn't the easiest for a lot of people. And I'm not saying that as a oh yeah, we can do it. It's just doing an open world concept is a much different type of taxing on you. Whereas I find it way easier to do that personally than write up a script or a story and then have to constantly remember and reference it. Or read a story that's been written. I find it so much harder to be entertaining and to be engaging with a pre-written story than I do with one that feels so natural to me, where I feel like I can just dynamically roll with it. I understand what my NPCs are feeling, and I understand what's happening in the world in order to allow my players to get the interaction from me. Whereas if I'm reading from a book and the player does something, if it's not what I expected, I'm too stressed out about being like, okay, well, what would the book, like, what does this want to react to? Whereas I just don't play like that. Yeah. But that's me. I know plenty of other DMs who are the exact opposite. Going off of the book makes them more creative. And so again, going off a book doesn't make you not creative, but feel free to be creative with it. Right. But yeah, layers are super important, I think.
Because I like onions. I'm just kidding. Cosmic.
What did Cosmic say?
Oh, are you talking about that crazy damn near 1 round and 300 HP?
Oh, right. Yeah, he had a battle too where they threw an archdevil at them in one encounter. Which, oh my god, I gotta just say, the fact that someone used an archdevil is just so brought a smile to my face. Such an underutilized. I think I have not heard of someone pulling out an archdevil in a long time.
To be fair, though, again, I feel like you need to be of a certain level of a party to interact with.
Well, okay, so what had happened? So what had happened was
that high level.
What had happened was, dude didn't get off a single hit.
Yes.
They knocked him down to 1 HP, and then before he could even do anything, they just flat out murdered him at 1 HP. And then and then the Hydra was such a cool concept, because this is something that it's like one of those like details that I don't remember about it. So the spell, or the Shatter, such a great attack spell, you know.
Oh,
he was using this against the Hydra. But apparently, one of those little details that I don't remember, you don't need to be able to see your target for Shatter. So he targeted the Hydra's heart and just fucking annihilated it. And I didn't know you could do that. I'm like, that's so I didn't know you didn't have to see, like, I didn't know you could just imagine the target. So he just targeted no, I don't know if it's like target an area or an actual object that you know of. I don't know how the spell reads, but it was fascinating. And I'm just like, that's such a dope-ass way to win a battle.
Each creature within a 10-foot radius sphere centered on a point. So you could center it on...
Oh, centered on a point. So he centered it on the center of the Hydra. Right where the heart would be.
Yeah.
That's
crazy.
That's dope.
And yeah, it is... Has
and it was the spell Shatter that he upcast to 6th level. Placed it on the heart, making it pop like a balloon.
That's dirty.
That's hella dirty.
That's dirty. Proud of you.
That was great. I love those in-game moments where someone just is like, no, I got this. I got how to do this. All right. So, homebrew from your players. This is something that one of your players has created.
So, my player, we're going to call him Glim. He is a boss. His mind is crazy, analytical, and very interesting. And so he has some very, very cool concepts for spells. And he wanted to try and put some of them together, and so we worked them out. And this is the end result of a couple of the different spells that we went through. Let's see. Okay, so the first one is called Doom Debris.
Doom Debris.
Doom Debris. All right.
Okay.
Don't
Okay.
This.
What level?
So this is a 3rd level spell.
It's 3rd level spell.
Level transmutation.
Hey! Don't judge a spell by its name.
Exactly. You know.
Don't judge a spell by its name.
All these spells are created by some kind of kooky wizard, anyways. All right. So they
What wizard isn't kooky? Okay.
You know what I mean? Tasha's hideous laughter. Like, come on now. Whatever. It's fine.
Such an OP spell, though. Such a dumb OP spell.
It's ridiculous. So casting time is 1 action, and it is range of self. The components are somatic and material. You need a lava rock and a fly's wing. This is all created by him.
Okay.
Concentration up to a minute. So it reads, the ground smashes in a 10-foot radius around you, leaving a small area of debris. So imagine like a superhero landing.
Right.
All of the
I'm actually thinking more of like one of those like superhero power-ups where the ground like crackles a little bit, and then a few like pieces just, and then just some pieces just kind of float off the ground and then like settle or just sit there and rumble off the surface. Okay.
That's kind of the
so you basically so it's essentially it's a 10-foot radius. You said 10-foot radius? 10-foot radius. And it basically disrupts the surface level of whatever you're on and makes debris.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's its initial.
Right. That's what it starts with.
All right. It says each creature besides yourself in this radius, when the ground smashes, makes a strength saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes 2d6 bludgeoning damage and falls prone.
Wait, sorry, say that again?
So, on a failed save, the creature takes 2d6 bludgeoning damage.
So, any creature within
that area when the
I was reading Cosmic's comment, and so I missed that whole thing. My bad.
That's right.
So, any creature within the 10-foot must make a save.
Yeah, any creature within that 10-foot area must make a Constitution... was it Constitution? I think so. A saving throw or take 2d6 bludgeoning damage and fall prone. Now the reason
Okay.
Now the reason why the damage is not that high.
I'm wondering why Constitution, and not Dex, because if you're giving them the opportunity to not fall over, Constitution would be the shockwave. I would understand.
It was strength that they ended up making it, and I don't remember why we chose that. Maybe it was just. I do see what you're saying when it comes to Dex, especially if they're falling prone.
Because I could see strength if it were a feeling of like gravity pushing down. But the idea that the ground is moving and they would be stabilizing themselves, my mind immediately goes to dexterity. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just, again, just like in normal D&D fashion, or in D&D discussion
again,
fashion.
I want to put my train of thought towards why we ended up going this route, because we did have to hone a lot of these from their original conception, obviously.
Okay, but it is a strength check for right now.
It is a strength check.
Okay, so on a fail of a strength check, they go prone and take how much damage?
2d6.
That's not small. That's actually a decent amount for falling. And so what's damaging them? Is it the fall, or is it the fact that they're falling through debris? Is the debris like being flung around?
So the in this situation, it's just the disturbance, the pressure from the crushing, the initial boom that created the debris is what's doing the damage, not the debris itself.
Interesting. So now, I don't know if you will explain it later, but is it more like a crushing downward force, or is it an outward pulse? I'm really curious how he designed it.
I don't think he got into the specifics of which one he preferred. I believe the mentality is this like downward, almost like you were talking about, like a gravity, like just
so
imagine...
I'm glad you brought that up, and the reason why I would think that is because it reminds me of Bleach, because in Bleach, because most of the time when you have animes discussing energy levels, it's usually an outward pressure, it's usually an emanation of your energy. I loved how Bleach describes it, because when a weaker character would come up to a more powerful character and they would emanate, it's not that they would get knocked off their feet, they would go to a knee. Because the pressure, the air pressure, the physical essence of that energy is like excess gravity. It's literally like the weight of the air, the weight of everything around them, because of that pressure of that person's energy is literally forcing them. And this is what I think of when you say that, is this person is almost making the area so pressurized with this power. That would make sense for strength, because instead of falling over, you're basically trying not to be forced to your knees. And it would make sense for taking damage, because it's like a sudden weight crushing down on you.
I honestly feel like that's a lot of the idea of the downward force, like everything around it just getting this huge weight dropped on it.
That's what. Yeah, no. This makes more sense. That would make more sense for the strength and the damage. But no, I love the visual. Excuse me. I love that visual, because that's like one thing I loved about Bleach is how they talked about energy flow, like why each of their energy is manifested. Mm-hmm. But I loved that idea that energy weighed you down and didn't push you back.
Yeah. So the last line says, the small debris around you then levitates 4 feet in the air, and you can choose one of the following effects. Okay, there are five effects.
This is a level 3 spell. Damn. Okay.
Yes. So the first effect, you can launch the debris in a 15-foot wide, 90-foot long straight line.
Like a whip.
Not like, almost like, imagine the spell Gust. How it has this like...
not like a straight line, but you just can throw it in one direction. Not a cone, but just in a straight... Yes. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So imagine like you're the center, and then out this direction, all the debris just comes up, and you just hurl it.
So basically,
forward.
10 foot wide, 90 feet away.
15 feet wide, but 90 feet away. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
In a straight line, if the debris hits a creature or object in the line, the debris stops moving and falls to the ground. So
in that square.
Yes.
So the other debris would continue on. It's just,
correct.
but okay. So stacking makes sense. I totally like that. Yeah.
It falls to the ground. If the creature is hit by the debris, it must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes 10d4 bludgeoning damage, and half as much on a success. And after which, if you use this ability, the spell ends. So that's its like. You're blowing the spell on doing this thing.
Okay, this is a lot. This is a lot for level 3, but okay, continue. 4 more. There's still 4 more ways you could use it.
Yes.
Man,
So
4d10. Wow, that's a lot of damage.
10d4. But that's technically better because you have a minimum of 10.
Yeah, versus a minimum of 4. That's
yes,
fair.
The top is still 40, but
But still, 10d4. Wow.
Okay. Option 2. The debris explodes outward in a 20-foot radius around you.
So an extra 10, basically just goes an extra 10 feet?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yes. And a 20-foot radius around you. Any creature in the radius must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, they take 4d8 bludgeoning damage, or half as much on a success, after which the spell ends.
Yep, I've already seen my first major change I would make. I'd flip those 2 damages. Because you're talking about, think about this, right? You're talking about the straight shot. Mm-hmm. The further you have to go, right, the more energy you would have to have launched it. So technically, if you hit someone further away, I would think that 4d8 would be great for that straight shot, because you're also potentially hitting just everyone in a line that distance. Whereas you're only allowing 10 feet out as a shockwave. That tells me that should pack more of a punch, right? Because it's in all directions and you're closer to the debris. So I would almost, I mean, it's kind of weird because I think also the forward one should only be like 10 foot wide. But then again, you were at a 10-foot radius, so it's already 20 feet wide. So you're honing it into 15 foot. Yeah, it's hard to say, because technically it's saying that if you're going to hurl it that far, you would have more force to it, so it would do more damage. But that close range.
So my thought process, and to be honest, for the most part, to me, when it comes to, because of how I DM, the damage level doesn't matter as much as long as it's within a certain bounds.
Okay.
Right? As long as it's within a certain range for that spell's level, I'm roughly comfortable with it, right? And so, like, if I look at what's the average damage that you might get on a fireball spell, which is a third level spell, or a lightning bolt, which is a third level spell, if it roughly averages out to about what one of these abilities would do as a third level spell,
thinking about it too, again, thinking about just like kicking a rock versus throwing a rock, right? Kicking a rock goes 10 feet. It's going to hurt, but whatever. Throwing a rock 30 feet, you're gonna feel that one, right? That's going to hurt a lot more than someone kicking a rock 10 feet at you. And I'm just trying to think of like being in battle, right?
Yes.
Like amount of stuff getting kicked into my face versus being 30 feet away and someone just hurled a massive... And again, you did say it's the entire debris field being hurled versus it just going out in its own direction, which would lessen... Okay, so it's just taking me a second to process, like... Because at first it sounded like... That sounds weird that the one direction would have less damage, but once you put the physics into it, it makes sense that it would take more, and you're throwing more, so therefore more damage. So it's just the dex save or take that damage?
Yes, or you take half as much. So it's like, it's not going to be wasted. Again, just like Fireball, it's not going to do nothing. Like, you choose where it goes. So you know who's going to be in your line of sight when you cast this.
I would almost add, for the Shockwave one, a failed dex save also knocks them prone. Like an extra ability to knock the other people prone. Because it would make sense that if you're shockwaving it, and...
I do agree with that, especially...
that would be kind of cool to do that. But I also have another idea of like, I like this setup concept. I just have an idea for different abilities, but more talking about more of a Doved type build than this.
Interesting.
So we'll talk about that after.
Yes. Well, also there are 3 more abilities.
Yes, there's still 3 more. That's what I said after. Yeah.
Okay. So again, after this one, the spell ends.
Hold on, we got some things in chat. So, so back with Cosmic. So he was saying that he was wondering. So does it have to specifically be a lava rock, or would any type of volcanic rock
in your world? Volcanic rock.
Okay, so it's just a volcanic type of rock. And then you did say strength. He says that Dex is overused as a spell save. I think so too, which is why typically for me I do my saves based off of the condition. not so much like a spell like he said. Yeah, most spells are dex save, but it's like depending on what it's trying to do to you. I think that this save should represent what's happening to you, right? Like someone's trying to make you sick. I think that should be a con save over a dex save, even though it's a spell. Like depending upon how the spell's saying. I really think that he's right. Like dex can be overused a lot. Yeah. I think it's just more when you talk about the physics of what's happening. And then sounds like force damage. Then it has diminishing returns, which makes sense. And then so he's saying that the further range, the less the power as it travels, doing less damage as it eventually hits its target. Yeah, so yeah, you could say that over the 90 feet it would do fall off damage, but you're also hurling all of that amount of rocks, so it's kind of one of those like...
My thought behind it is like each one of these rocks is like has enough magical energy to go that distance.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like...
Because it's not so much force that's pushing it, it is just magic. It's
yes.
Magic propulsion. Interesting. Yeah, no, this is fascinating. I like this build up.
No,
it's still I don't know if level 3 is quite right, but
here's the deal. The biggest reason why I think it should be higher, even though I allowed it at this level for him. I think it should be higher is because of its massive utility.
Its complexity,
we haven't even gotten to yet.
Because at like level 3, I think the only spells that get this complicated are things like Chromatic Orb or a summoning spell. But when you're talking about a spell that has multiple effects, man, I think you don't really start seeing those until like at least level 4.
You have Bestow Curse. You have a couple of options you can use.
Is Bestow Curse level 4?
Is level 3.
Is it? Oh.
Yes. You also have stuff like Conjure Animals, which is kind of complicated. You just have different level tiers you can choose from.
And I feel like the summoning ones make sense, but it's like... And then, like, Chromatic Orb, though, is one of those... I think... Isn't that level 2?
Level 1.
It's Chromatic... Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah. And that one's not complicated, because it's more of just the elemental effect. But, yeah, it's just...
Well, that doubling... what was it? Is that Chromatic Orb or is that a different one?
Mm-hmm.
There's one where if you like keep rolling doubles for the damage, like you can keep rolling damage, and it simulates it reiterating itself. I gotta remember what spell.
That's crazy.
It's like a first level spell.
And then what he says also, what about Uncanny Dodge and Evasion feats reactions to lessen or negate damage if it's a dex save base? Would it bypass the knock prone as well? So if you have Uncanny Dodge or any kind of evasion feat, would they be able to use that in order to bypass the dex save and or the knocking prone?
Well, the way it would work is Uncanny Dodge. Uncanny Dodge, I believe, just has allows you to negate half of whatever damage.
Is Uncanny Dodge a feat or a spell? I think it's a feat, right?
It's a feature of a class. It's a class feature. And it's a class feature of Rogue.
I should be able to
do basically what it lets you do is when you're making a saving throw, specifically a dexterity saving throw, if you would take half damage on a success, instead you take no damage. And if you fail, you take half damage. So the most damage you can take is half damage if you have one of these features. Let me... Classes...
Interesting. I can't find it in Avery. But yeah, so those would not be beneficial against this spell?
No, they would still work. You would still fall prone if you failed your save, but you would take half damage because that's what the feature gives you.
Okay, so the feature will always work for the damage part, but you still have to roll to save for the prone.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Spell 3 or effects 3. You violently swirl the debris around yourself in a 10-foot radius.
Kind of like Cloud of Daggers.
Yes. In a 10-foot radius around yourself. For the duration of the spell, any creature trying to enter the area takes 2d4 bludgeoning damage for every 5 feet traveled in the area.
Okay.
Additionally, every 5 foot of distance takes 10 feet of movement. Basically
So
it's difficult terrain, and you take damage. So,
doesn't that follow Cloud of Daggers? Isn't that basically what Cloud of Daggers is?
I took this from the spike growth.
Spike growth. Gotcha.
So spike growth, it's difficult terrain, and you take 1d4 going through. This is just a little bit more damage.
Gotcha.
For a level spell.
Okay.
So it does that, and any melee attacks made in this area have disadvantage. So basically, you're making yourself kind of you're already kind of squishy as a wizard, so you're just really discouraging anybody from being within melee range of you.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's just like, don't get in my bubble zone, don't try.
And that sucks for anybody that you knocked prone, because if you knock them prone with the initial blast and then activate this, they have to stand up in it.
Yes.
That's
then
nice.
Their job is to
Debris tornado.
Exactly. Now, thinking about it now, I should have done something about ranged attacks.
See, I think what I would have done just before because you might have already done this. I think what I would have done is label or modeled this one off for Cloud of Daggers, and then had another option that basically lets you mimic spike growth, where one, you get to swirl it all around you, mimicking Cloud of Daggers, but the other one would be the debris that you've made, start to like rumble and twist and turn on the ground, making it difficult terrain. And, because it's like rocks basically tumbling around you. So it would be difficult terrain and it could hurt you. So I think I would have tried to do that, where I would have had 2 powers split, one to mimic Cloud of Daggers and then one to mimic spike growth, because I do like that. I do like the idea of using those as foundations.
44 slashing damage when it enters. 5-foot cube on each side. Okay. Spinning daggers, filling.
What you could do, if you want one that helps with ranged, add an ability, because it would just be a different one. You could add an ability where it says like you raise the debris and it forms basically you form large boulders, you just form large debris fields equal to a shield size, and maybe you get 4 of them that operate around you, and then you could say that now counts as half cover. Well, because you said you wanted something against ranged.
Well, not that I wanted. I was just thinking logically, if I have this up, would an arrow
go right
have
through
the
it.
same effectiveness?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think something especially like Cloud of Daggers or whatever you want to model it off of, I don't think ranged attacks would be affected at all. I think that's the balancing aspect.
I mean, balancing wise, I agree. I don't want to add it for that, but logically speaking, I would think would it be? I mean, I guess you could. It would
be. It would be. So, I mean, if you really think about it, the odds would basically, you turn it into a percentile roll, then it'd have to be 10% or less. Now you're just getting pedantic. But I agree with you, which is why I think if you slightly modified one that was specific to range attacks, where it's that you're going up against range, so you use this ability to specifically give you half cover, 3/4 cover.
Yes. And we did end up going that route.
Okay,
so
cool.
The next one, that was all of number 3.
So that one just basically gives you a no-go zone.
Correct. And that lasts for the duration. And again, it's concentration up to a minute.
Gotcha.
So the first 2 ended immediately. And so you choose one of these at casting.
Gotcha. So you do the initial boom and blast out, or boom and focus, or boom and cloud.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So those first 2 would have technically been an instantaneous spell,
and then they're gone
instead of a concentration spell.
But these this one and the next ones are going to be hold on to.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Cosmic says that he would think that the debris field may act as cover depending on the ranged attack type, magic, projectile, bullet from a gun like weapon.
That's kind of what I was gonna go into, but again, like I said, I do think mechanically speaking, that is enough for that ability. I don't think
I think
need
so too.
to add anything more to it for it to feel like a healthy ability.
And then you also don't want it to be a god ability. I mean, you don't want them to
Exactly.
basically make themselves a shielded character that nobody can touch, period, right? You have to have that idea of if you're protecting yourself against ranged attacks, you're going to be weaker against up front. If you're going against up front, you're going to be weaker against range. It's kind of not supposed to be cliche, but it is the nature of the beast when it comes to trying to make a successful encounter, because otherwise, again, I mean, all the players think that they want that. I mean, everyone thinks that they want to just be we're just going to, steamroll everything. But in reality, that does get boring very quick. Like, it's great, like, in those stories like Cosmic had, where you can take on a big bad, and just mollywop them that quickly. But you don't want to do that with every encounter, because what's the point? Like, where's the danger? Where's the aspect? I mean, I don't like it when every encounter feels like luck. I hate that gaming session, and I don't know how many of you guys have that. But when you're like, basically when every encounter within like 2 minutes, everyone's like half dead or like 1 hit point, and like you literally get one good roll and win the fight. And it's like, that's not how every single fight should be. I think fights should have an ebb and flow. I think some fights should be extremely difficult for the players, and I think you should give them fights that should just be like, because again, more natural. And I think the players want that. You want once in a while to feel powerful.
Yeah.
But you want to be challenged. You want to have a reason to get better. Because there is a different type of game style, right? There's one game style where you build your character to get better at what your DM's throwing at you. And then there's the gaming style that I feel like if your game's too easy, what just sounds cool. You know what I mean? Like, what's going to look cool or sound cool when I do it, but not so much what's going to be beneficial because it's too easy, right? But yeah, no, a good idea, though, on a lot of different ways that you could approach this type of spell.
Yeah. Okay, so number four, you gather the debris, and it clings to you like armor. And your AC increases to 16 for the duration. So it's basically like a...
so it wouldn't help if you were already armored up, but for a mage,
yes,
really helps out.
16 for the duration. Additionally, while in this state, when you get hit, you can use your reaction to reduce the incoming damage by 1d12 plus your spellcasting modifier. Doing so will consume the debris and end the spell.
Okay, I was going to say, like, how many times can you do that? Holy crap. But no, well, yeah, just basically a one time the debris all basically forms, takes the hit, and I like that. Because that could be useful for something like Magic Missile that's going to hit you no matter what. Being able to reduce at least that first missile's damage.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because that would actually be a fun conversation. Is like, well, if I get hit by Magic Missile by 3 missiles, do I get to negate 1d12 of all of it, or just that first incoming missile? Because like you said, once it hits, it's consumed. And Magic Missile... Because Magic Missile doesn't hit you all at once. Magic Missile hits you, so...
like, theoretically, technically, mechanically, it should be one instance of damage, right? Not multiple instances of damage.
Well, what? Magic Missile?
No, being able to negate...
Yeah, so it should be the first missile. You would do it, but then immediately would be gone.
Whatever else you would get, you would get.
Okay, but I like that. I do like the armor aspect. I like that.
Yes.
That's dope.
That's it. You
Okay.
just get an AC of 16. You can hold on to it for a while, but if something would hit you anyways and say it's going to take you down and you want to negate that damage,
Okay,
boom.
I have an idea for a counter one to that, or not a counter, but another one. But I want to hear the last one first.
Okay. This one goes to the making...
ranged.
And, things of that nature. This one's more just general utility, but you could 100% use it that way. So, number 5 is you form the debris into one of the following things. A, you can create a bridge up to 30 feet.
For out of combat
30
use.
30 feet and 10 feet wide. So basically, you can create like a 30-foot long, 10-foot wide bridge.
Okay.
You can create a 15 by 15-foot square wall, just like basically the same dimensions, but just create a wall. Or you can create a dome 15 feet high in the middle by 15 feet wide.
Gotcha, like a shelter.
Just like a little, like, yes.
Okay.
And these constructs have an AC of 12 and 6d4 plus spellcasting modifier hit points. So, like, as your spellcasting modifier go up, it can get more hit points. And if any of these structures are destroyed, the spell ends.
Interesting. Okay.
Now
I like that last one a lot, actually. Like the use of it, that's kind of dope.
Yes, and I think, and again, this is one of those spells where you can do some really cool stuff with it in combat. And
I would abuse the fuck out of the bridge. You have no. I would abuse the fuck out of the bridge in combat. You have, dude. If you literally basically just said that I can make a 10-foot wide by 30-foot long pole arm. So imagine I just square up to the big bag evil and go, "What's up, dude? There's a lot of water underneath this, isn't there? Let me just bridge this gap." And I form a bridge that starts from me, and I just say, "I want the bridge in front of me." And if there's a brick wall behind him, my bridge should just appear, smash through him into the brick wall, and smash him into the wall.
Now,
so as far as I'm concerned,
there might be a contest of your spellcasting modifier against maybe some AC or some, depending.
But I'm just saying, like, I think, because I'm imagining it, I just do this and a bridge just appears and starts to be built in front of me. If he's in front of me, or push him off, if you can't make the distance, run up. He's still 10 feet away. Make a bridge and push him off.
I mean, it's possible.
So Cosmic says, with the bridge, is the HP per 5-foot space or for the structure as a whole?
For the structure as a whole.
So interesting enough, so that fourth one, being able to make armor,
yes.
a cool alternative to that would be, because it's like mage armor, I'm imagining.
Pretty much.
So what about like spiritual weapon? Or the spell like mage weapon where you can have like, like a floating spectral weapon on with you. Imagine being able to also do that where you turn it into like maybe like a spike comes out of the ground.
I do really like
and
that
you can
idea,
make
though.
It can make one extra attack where like a spike comes up and attacks someone within 10 feet of you. So it's but that's all you get until for the duration or something, and it acts like mage hand to where you form them together, right? So it has to move and then it has to make one attack. But if it just gets destroyed because it has its own AC, it could get destroyed, like you said. It would end the spell, or it's for that. So just kind of an addition to making this a very more versatile concept. But I'm also thinking of this more in a way for like I mentioned earlier, like Dovd in a earthbender kind of concept, because these are great ideas for more earthbending than this particular spell. But I do like this spell.
Real quick, there is one final paragraph that I almost forgot about that gives it a little bit more spice.
Ooh, spicy.
So it says, as a bonus action on your turn, you can switch between any of the continuous effects / structures until the spell ends.
So those last three can be interchangeable.
Yes.
So you can go from armor to a structure to armor to the last one, which was like a shield.
Yes.
Interesting.
So you can switch between them for the duration. It says if you switch between any of the structures with hit points, it retains the same hit points.
Right, so if your structure took damage and then you change the structure, it still has the same damage.
If any structure is damaged, you cannot switch to option 3 or 4.
So if you make a structure and that gets damaged, you cannot then turn it into the cloud.
Yes.
Because it's damaged and the cloud doesn't take damage.
It's not going to have as much effectiveness.
I like that. I like that little caveat.
Yeah. So once any of your structures take damage, you're pretty much stuck with 5. And you can do that until your structures run out of damage. But before that, you could go from your spinny cloud and then turn it into armor, and then you could make a bridge and then go do whatever you got to do.
That's interesting.
But again, if you use your reaction to negate it in armor form, spell's done, whatever the case may be.
Interesting.
There will be a thing, I haven't actually built it yet because none of the players were at that level, where when you cast it at higher levels, X, Y, and Z.
Gotcha. So you can upcast it.
More, yeah. But
it's a lot for a level 3. It's meaty.
Yes.
It's a dope ass spell. I would have to change a lot in order for it to really like make better effect, because not only for level 3 is that just a lot of magic, but like you said, the versatility of that is, I guess it would really depend on what kind of spell and how often people could have it, right? Because if it's a very common spell that's very versatile and very powerful for low-level magic users to just be able to have that much manipulative power, you know what I mean?
You could put the stipulation of, yes, it's a level 3 spell, but like some other spells, you could require a certain item of a certain value, perhaps that gets consumed.
Here's a concept that I've toyed with.
You know?
Here's a concept that I've toyed with before for specialty spells. This is kind of going for DMs who want to make their own stuff. And I've thought about this. I've never implemented it, but I've thought about it for a couple years now. Where when you want to make your own spell, or when you want a player to craft something, and some aspects make sense, especially if you're using spell slots or like memorization. But if you're using something that would indicate why it's a certain level, a concept I've toyed with is why, if the level is indicative of the power of the spell and the components needed, but doesn't necessarily mean that that level of spell has to correlate with the level of the caster, right? Because it's not a 1-on-1. It's not like a level 3 mage can cast a level 3 spell. The spell level is not directly tied to the caster level. The caster can only learn the average level of spell, right, when they upgrade, right? So when you're level 10, you have access to so many types of spells at certain levels because of your education. Mm-hmm. But what's to say that you couldn't have such a complicated spell that is cheaper, but more complicated? So what if a spell has the component cost, the power level of a level 3 spell, but the complexity that requires someone who would at least need to be able to have level 5 spells?
So it's technically a level 3 spell, but you can't cast it until you have the ability to cast level 5 spells.
So I've thought about this for years, is for specialty spells, especially created by players that are a little bit beefier, if it makes sense to level it down, why does the access have to be the same? Why not have a level 3 spell that, again, has the components and has the aspects of level 3, but the complexity of it, like this, just means that you have to be of a higher understanding. But the reason is let's say you are able to cast level 5 spells, which means you have more than one level 3 spell slot. You had to wait this long to get this spell, but now it still only costs you a level 3 spell slot. So you have to be of higher level to cast it, but it costs you less because of what it. So it's hard to really implement, but it's an idea I've had for a long time on how to bridge this gap.
I like the mentality, I really do, but that to me begs the question:
specialties.
What if you technically have the ability to cast it as a technically level 5 but 3rd level caster,
right?
But just not the understanding and complexity? Could a level 3 caster do something like how you would you would learn a new language or something?
I got it. How about this? If you're able to cast level 3 spells, so if level 3 is the highest spell you can cast, mm-hmm. you can cast this spell, but you can only like learn one of each. Like each one of those options is a spell at level 3. So if your max level is 3, you can learn one of the 5. Just one of the 5. But once you're
And
able
each
to
one is a
cast,
completely different.
but once you're you're able to cast level 5 spells. Now this is every time you cast it, all options are open to you.
Interesting. Okay.
So if I'm let's say I can only cast level 3 spell. So
kinda
what
get
you
with
can
that.
also do is that's also if this is a spell to memorize. Let's say these are in scrolls. Let's say at level 3, the scroll is dedicated to one of the outcomes. But you can find a scroll that's the level 5 version or takes a level 5 caster that is the open option. That is literally the I can change on a dime. I can do anything I want. So again, these are ideas of how High Point would make it work because it's very powerful for a level 3. I do agree with Cosmic. He says based just solely on the versatility, he would say a level 5.
And see, that's the biggest reason why.
So what I would
think
do-
it should be higher is
So what I would do is based on the versatility, I agree. But if I were to keep it a spell, what I would do is make each one of these options a level 3 spell, flat out. Once you cast it, straight to that. So you can get a scroll of the first one, where it's the single directional wave. You can get a scroll that's the shockwave. You can get a scroll that's the cloud. You can get a scroll that's the shield. That's all you get. You get the scroll that's the body shield. If this is specific to a type of maybe like a druid or something, and they can just kind of cast it without a scroll, then I would say again, if your max level is 3, you can only learn one of each. They're each individual spells. But once you get to the level 5 version, they cast at level 3, but the level 5 spell is the optional one.
yes,
Where
you can't
it's
get another one of those effects without using another spell slot until you are level 5.
and then you understand it's all the same spell. It's kind of like again, weird idea, but something I've toyed with because
I
of
weirdly like
and
that
and
mentality.
and that right there, that last thing I said was the birth child of it. It's to help with those spells that have either options or are very, very similar. And so my idea was, well, what if they were all broken down into smaller, cheaper spells, but there's a point at which you're like, holy shit, I understand magic to a point to where that's all the same spell. I've been treating it as different things, but what if halfway through casting it, all I do is this? You know what I mean? It's that understanding of, it's like anything subject. You can learn math and you'll learn the equations, but it's not until a couple of years where you're like, I now know how to piece these together. It's hard to implement on paper. That's the reason why I scrapped the idea. Because at the time I was really big on trying to document it, like you saw with the Deceptor class.
Oh, yeah.
And it's hard to put this idea on paper. But for now, my realm, now with High Point as it is, being able to have these ideas where once you're at a certain level, you can now have access to a higher version of this spell.
I really like that. So one of my friends is toying with a new version of 5th edition created by another creator, something called Level Up Adventures Guild or something like that.
Okay.
And it's pretty cool. But they have don't do this to me right now.
Mm-hmm.
My train of thought. Where were we going 30 seconds ago?
Being able to cast magic, understand magic, more complex.
Okay. They have this idea of something called rare spells.
Mm.
Okay, and so basically it's your regular spell, but this one's special, right? It just has that little bit more of an ability than the regular one. And they have this whole process you can go through in your downtime to learn or discover a rare spell, but they can also be found out in the world. They can be in spell scrolls and this and that and whatnot. But just the idea of rare spells, and additionally they have a mechanic for your downtime activities for you to tinker with a spell and create a rare version yourself.
Right. And that's very similar to what I have once you can learn how to do spell manipulation, is being able to basically customize
it. It can be something as simple as one thing that's always bothered me, the entangle spell. I love the entangle spell, but after its initial cast and the person breaks out, it's practically useless. Mm-hmm. It's just there now.
Yeah.
But what if you just had the ability to, if somebody was standing on that difficult terrain, as a bonus action, you could re-entangle whoever's in there.
Right.
Just re-entangle them. That would be
or even as an action. Even if it would behoove you to reconnect with your thing and then reinitiate the spell, that would be a dope ass like addition to it.
Yeah, like just
And this is the exact reason why I eventually wanted to create all of my own, my side magical classes, because I wanted that's why like my sorcerer, the one where you have to, your spells are physical manifestations, so you have to figure out the pieces to put together. And then you have like, the difference between like the actual mage, which is why I like how I also divided it up, because it depends on how they mess with magic. So mages can be super customizable, right? If you want to be a mage in my realm, you can basically take the base spell and customize it all you want. But the more you customize it and the better you get at it, it goes from what most people would call flavor text, right?
Sorry,
because at first it sounds like it's, because it sounds for a lot of the, for at first it just sounds like all you're doing is making it look different. But the idea would be that as you tinker with it, you can make it better. So, the idea of being able to say, well, I cast Fireball. Well, I want to tinker with it. I want it to be a fire arrow. That's totally doable. People do that all the time. It still has the same damage. But once you learn to turn it into a fire arrow, the idea is, well, what else can I do with it? It's like the spell fires it straight. Can I make it turn? I've seen other spells go in another direction. So the idea in my realm is, well, if I can study that spell that makes things go in different directions, and I can study this spell that does a very high-powered effect only straight, if I could eventually learn where the similarities and differences are, find out what part of this spell makes it change direction, find out what part of this spell is what dictates it goes straight, then can I interchange them? Can I learn enough about magic? Can I learn enough about language to change? Because again, basically the way I look at it is, when you're a mage, magic is in a way kind of like learning a new language, learning grammar. Once you've learned it, you can build your own sentences. So once you know what each piece of the spell does, because like with Fireball, you know that it summons fire from the elemental plane, and then you're holding it. Part of the spell is to hold it, and then the other part is to direct it. So if the first thing you learn is, once you've summoned it, if the first thing you learn is how to shape it, and you're like, oh, I can just play with those words because those are just fluffy words. Those words just make it take shape. But I'm like, oh, but this is the section that talks about damage. And and you'll learn, oh, it directly ties into the summoning. The summoning and the damage output are intricately tied. So if I could learn to tweak how much I pull from the realm, oh, but I pulled too much and it broke the spell. Oh, this is the part that contains it. So if I beef the containment and pull more energy, wait, now I have 8d6? I have my own custom Fireball? That's the way I want my characters to learn how to use a mage, right? Because the idea is, that's what mages do. That's why they're so powerful.
In something like that, like... And I always ask this because it's like, okay, when I'm now pulling this additional power out, is that going to require more power of me? Meaning, do I have to upcast it in order to get this effect to be higher?
Absolutely. So this is the beauty of it, is as you learn to manipulate it, whatever you're trying to do, once you learn all the integral pieces, right? Because it's the idea of trial and error. But once you learn that, and then there's I also have personal custom non-weapon proficiencies that you can learn, right? So there's spell engineering and spell crafting, things that basically are teaching you, they're studies of how spells work. It's not the study of spells, it's the study of basically like learning grammar in Latin versus learning a new language. And if you learn those feats, you basically get the heads up, you basically get a head forward on this. But yes, if you manipulate it enough, you can make the spell out of your range. That's how some spells got created, is you would manipulate a spell you knew, but then you got to it and you're like, yes, it's done. And then you would try to cast it and you couldn't. You wouldn't have enough. You wouldn't have the right material, right? Or you would realize that the materials you have aren't of high enough quality, they're not enough purity. And that's how you learn why a spell requires something, because maybe the spell goes off, but it just doesn't do what you want, even though everything's perfect, but you're like, it tries to use this and there's not enough here to use. There's not enough magic in this gem. I need a more valuable gem. I need to put more magic into this. So yes, depending on what happens, depending on how you manipulate it, it may become a brand new spell, but you may accidentally create a spell higher level than what you can cast. And again, you won't know if the spell is successful until you're at that level to cast the spell you created. But that doesn't mean everything you do is going to increase the level. You can decrease levels. You can make a level 1 fireball. If you learned how, you could make a fireball at a level 1. Why not? Why not make a 1d4 fire with a 10% chance of lighting any flammable object on fire? Why can't that be a level 1 spell? It just takes someone learning how to manipulate fireball and reduce all of the parameters, pull less fire from the elemental plane, but it's the same spell. So imagine just the classic concept, because everyone imagines fireball more like a Hadouken and an explosion. But imagine the classical just little hand of fire, and then just throw it like a baseball, and it just hits someone in the shoulder, and it does 1d4 damage, but it has a 10% chance of lighting their armor on fire. And then it's a small amount, but that, or you use that, and then you turn that into a cantrip. You basically have like light fire cantrips, but the idea is that there's nothing that says you can't increase, decrease, or just modify. Imagine being able to modify the fireball spell to where it's the same level, but you modify it to where it's directional, like you can actually direct it like around a corner or something, but it will just do less damage, or maybe the radius won't be as big because of what you've done. That's the idea that I take towards magic manipulation. And that's why in my realm, mages are the most powerful considered, because there's nothing they can't do. They have understood the fundamental workings of magic to where if you go to a powerful enough mage and say, this is what I want, it doesn't matter how detailed, it's all a matter of time and money, right? It's just, is the mage more powerful enough, and can you get the materials required to make the spell go off? But that's why my balance to that is the wizard, because the wizard, in terms of raw power, can't be matched. So a wizard versus a mage, right? A mage can take fire purely out of the fire plane of the elemental fire plane and do anything they want with it. They can manipulate it, but all they get is what they pulled, and they can only pull to a certain extent, right? They have to be able to contain it and have all the parameters. So they can do a lot. Nobody can match the intricacies of what they could do. I mean, they could make a chainmail shirt made out of the very fabric of the fire elemental plane that won't burn you, but will burn anybody who attacks you. It could be that intricate. Wizard could never do that. But when it comes blow to blow, fist, like just punches, mages can do all this amazing thing, and they can pull all of this power and do a lot with it and throw it at, and throw that punch. And that punch will be very stylistic. It will be perfectly landed, and it will hurt. But a wizard can literally just basically tear a hole, essentially. The difference is basically rip a hole in the fabric of reality and just dump the actual elemental plane of fire on top of you. No frills, no fantastic looks. It's literally the difference between I could take an arsenal, I can make an army of the fire elemental plane and send it after you, versus I can dump the fire elemental plane on top of you. That's how I mastered, or that's how, not mastered, but that's how I like to balance those two. Wizards are raw. They take power and just tell it what direction to flow. It's kind of like opening a dam. All a wizard does is open the dam and say which direction the water's flowing, but they can do it in impressive feats of like amounts. Like their amounts are unbounded, because wizards are very, like, depending on their potential, they can have more potential than they realize and actually kill themselves by tapping too much into it. Being a wizard's very touch and go. Whereas being a mage, you know exactly what you're doing at all times. So it's those kind of intricacies that I like about it, because if you want to just be the heavy hitter, you don't need years of experience. You literally just throw power around, and you basically are just like, you're basically the barbarian. Wizards are the barbarians of magic.
That's crazy.
But that doesn't mean that they can't do intricate things. It just, their ability to do intricate things is way longer, because whereas a mage learns from someone else, reads a book and just mimics what the other people do and then can learn it. It's a science. Wizards, they learn from other people, but have to do. A mage can read a book, follow the instructions, and do something. A wizard has to do it and trial and error until it's done. Like, there is no way around it. If a wizard wants to cast fireball but turn it into an arrow, will take vastly long. Won't necessarily take longer, but the amount of effort will be vastly different. because you will have to sit there day in and day out, burning yourself out, exhausting yourself of all of your magical potential, constantly conjuring fire to the point of conjuring it in the shape that you want it. Whereas a mage just has to go read a book and go, oh, all I gotta do is change that word. Arrow. It's an hour of their time. It's a day of their time. Whereas you will take weeks, months. But when you do it, yours is still just a much heavier hit. Theirs is more finesse. Theirs is beautiful. But yours just is pure and raw. But yeah, that's... I like the idea of changing things up. And this spell that you have does just that. It's that idea of... might be classed a little low, but I like spells like this. I like spells that give more options, not necessarily because I don't think that all spells need options, but something like this, I think, this would be too messy to want to collect a bunch of spells that do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like being able to, like, you could have Cloud of Daggers, you could have Mage Armor, you could have all of these things, but it's not the same as having a very nice customized. And I like the way that they wrote it to where it all makes sense. It's not like a spell that just does random shit. From the very beginning, it starts out strong of it creates a debris field. Everything after that is what are you doing with the debris field? And that's great. I love that. I love he doesn't try to, do the whole thing where, oh, everything's flying around because of a gust of wind, so things could get blown around. That's not what's happening here. No, the debris is running around, right? You're not making magical armor. You're just covered in rock, and all of it will basically act like a ballistic armor, where if you get hit hard enough, all of it moves to that spot until it pierces literally every layer, and then you're left with the remaining like all of that is so, like we talked about in the very beginning of the stream, it's so well layered. It's not complicated. It's well layered. It's complicated for a level 3 spell, but it's so well layered in the sense that it sets itself up to do every piece. Every one of those items can be done.
Mm-hmm. So if you will allow me
to
have two that are really short.
Let me finish up my review then, and then we'll do that. We have plenty of time, so we'll definitely do the other ones.
Okay.
And then we'll get to the weather conversation. But yeah, I would say that I like this better as a power more than a spell. But if I was going to keep it as a spell, I would do like what I said.
A power
like more
a class feature?
Yeah, like Dovd being able to do this with his bending power. Yeah. Just because of the versatility and because of it fits more in my realm as a bending power. But as a spell, like I said, I'd keep every individual one like a level 3, but allow a person at a certain level to understand that this is all eventually one version of the same spell. Mm-hmm. And then have it basically present as is, but cast at a level 3 at a level. And then I would just do some minor tweaks. Just to, again, like I would probably take that one, make it feel more like Cloud of Daggers. I would probably make another one that actually mimicked vine growth or spike growth, because I do agree that those are really new cool options.
Right.
Again, that secondary blast I think should make them go prone.
Oh, yeah. From the number 2.
Yeah, so a couple changes. I would give it a solid 5. I don't really have a whole lot of use for it. I would give it a 4, but again, the layers, the creativity, and the fact that it all is... I don't have to drastically change anything. I just have to modify it, right? So It's not less than a 5. It wouldn't work as is as much in my realm. But if a player came in, like if that player came in and wanted to do just that, make all of these level 3 spells, make a level 5 that casts at a level 3, and do all of that, absolutely would do it and would love to do it. I just would take just those slight modifications. But yeah, I think 5 out of 10 for that guy.
Bet.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right, cool. So let's do 2 more, and then we'll get to the topic of weather. We still got like an hour, so we're good.
Okay. Again, these ones super short. So the first one is called Inhale Lightning.
Oh.
And it's a first level evocation spell.
Interesting.
It's a bonus action, and it's also range of self.
Okay.
It is verbal, somatic, and material. Thin copper wires the component, and its concentration up to a minute. Now, my envisioning of what this kind of looks like, especially with the name, I don't know if it exactly fits this description, but this is what we have. So it says, a storm cloud forms high above you, and you inhale lightning that strikes you. That's his description.
Okay.
So, like, imagine, like, there's a storm cloud above you, and this lightning comes down as you're, like, breathing in, and you inhale this lightning. Says, you are imbued with lightning for the duration. Any creature that attacks you, any creature that you attack or that melee attacks you for the duration takes 2d4 additional lightning damage.
2d4? That's a level 1 spell?
That's a level 1 spell.
2d4 damage for how long?
Concentration up to a minute.
That's pretty powerful.
Now, again, when I first was working with him to create these, this was kind of a while ago, but I didn't have all of the understanding of a lot of the mechanics you could do, especially with knowing action economy and how hasted somebody can get, how many attacks you can end up doing. I would likely maybe turn it to like 1d6. Or something to that effect, or
I would say
up it to level 2.
I would say this: if you want to remain level 1, 1d4 per level. So level 1 is a 1d4 extra lightning damage. Second level is 2d4. Third level, every time you upcast it, you add a d4.
I can see that.
That right there, I would be down. And then you could even justify a cantrip where it's just a solid 1. You get a cantrip where you literally just deal out a solid 1 point of extra damage as a cantrip. Like, almost just kind of like a dumb cantrip where... I mean, it's kind of dumb because then you would have to keep, like I don't know how you would continuously cast it.
You can... There are plenty of cantrips that are concentration. You can keep a cantrip up, so you don't have to, like, use your action economy to keep it up. But,
that's true.
You know, again, it's concentration, and so if you get knocked out of it, you get knocked out of it. And it's just the 1 damage.
Yeah.
But, again, on every single one of those iterations. So it's like, anytime someone's going to melee hit you... they're going to take that.
Exactly.
You know?
That's why I think, I think if you wanted to, you could be cheeky and try to do like a cantrip with it, although that's a impressive looking cantrip that you just swallow a bolt of lightning. Maybe like the cantrip version is like, you know, more like a static electricity.
Right.
Like your hair just starts to raise up and you're just like, what's going on? But like, don't worry about it. Just don't touch me. But I like the idea of, I think a 1d4 per level of upcast would be amazing, because then at that point, you know, you could just keep upcasting it and then you're basically, you know, just a walking light taser.
Yeah.
I like it.
Fairly simple. I don't think there's enough bonus action spells out there, to be honest. So
I'd give that one a 6. Again, other than changing the damage and playing around with it a little bit, I think it's a 6. I don't think I have a place for it. Like, I don't think I'm like missing it.
Right.
But the idea isn't bad. It's not a terrible idea. I just think that the damage would need to be adjusted. But for the right type of build, that's a cool concept.
That's honestly one of my favorite things is the concept that this guy comes up with.
No, you know what I would do? Here, I know how I would change it. So, same thing, 1d4 per level. I'd even allow the cantrip, you know, like the static cantrip where it's like you rub your feet on the ground a lot, and then you know, I wouldn't quite do the lightning bolt version, but here's how I would do it. It's a defense only spell. So, you get imbued. Anytime someone makes a melee hit on you, and you can even tie in like within 5 of your AC, because like if it's more than 5, maybe they fully miss.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, if anyone hits you, or you could just say on contact, if anyone were to hit you, they will receive 1d4 electric damage back. So that's all that happens. I would say that's just the base. Concentration's fine. However, if you have not been hit yet, you can choose to end the spell by imbuing your weapon with the extra 1d4. So you do the spell, you get defense for as long as you have the concentration, but if you haven't been hit, basically the idea if you haven't discharged, you could then go, you know what? Put it in my weapon. Now you get the 1d4 or the 2d4 or whatever upcast. But the idea is that it's either a permanent defense for the duration, or it's a one-time added attack bonus, like that's imbued to your weapon.
Interesting. I like that idea.
I
like that idea.
I think, and then you could even do something where it's like, if you haven't been hit, maybe you can do double. So maybe it's 1d4 every time you get hit, but maybe if you haven't been hit, you can do 2d4 as an attack, because the idea is, again, you're at full charge. You're imbuing your weapon at full charge, whereas, because it wouldn't make much sense, you can only do 1d4 attack, but I can get hit 9 times and do 1d4 each time. You know what I'm saying? Like, that wouldn't make as much sense. But if you're saying that you can get 1 hit off at full charge, but it's twice the damage, or you can use it as defensive. So depending on who's using it, it's either really good as defense because it's multiple hits.
I like the idea.
Or it's a one-time really nice hit.
Think about if you just have this up for the minute, and it's the 1d4 if you get hit, just statically. But at any point in time during that minute, I can choose to, on a hit, expend the energy that I have into that hit, that specific hit, and it ends the spell.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I mean is, okay. I look at it as imbuing the weapon, but same point. Okay. The idea is that it's always on as defensive. I'm just saying that in order to justify why you can keep getting hit and keep discharging, when you choose, if you haven't been hit yet during the duration, then it's like a times 2, because it makes more sense.
I see what you're saying.
Because again, why wouldn't you just walk up to someone and just let them hit you for the 1 extra d4 if you're only going to hit them 1 time for 1d4? I think you need to make it more spicy.
No, I see that.
To want to use it as an attack, because the idea is that it's supposed to defend a mage, right? You would want it to defend a weaker character. So for them to want to get rid of this armor, it's not going to be worth just doing the same damage as someone would take getting hit, right? You really want to make it worth getting rid of the armor. So if it's like going to be the killing blow, and they really want to make sure it's the killing blow, and they haven't been hit yet, that's when you really want to drive it home.
I would even say it would be kind of cool, especially in a moment like that, is if when they discharge, that, again, if they haven't been hit, the person that they just discharged it on loses their reaction, so it gives that wizard a chance to run away in that moment.
Yeah, like that would basically give them an opportunity to remove the opportunity attack. I'm okay with that, like a stun. Basically, it would basically be stunned.
It's not like I'm taking away your actions.
Actually, why not just do that on hit if you're successful? So again, even more. Oh, how about this? Instead of double damage, so instead of making it complicated where if you hit it's double, you charge yourself, you get the 1d4 defense if you're ever hit with melee. If you are, or at any point you can discharge it, end the spell, discharge it, and attack still for the 1d4. But maybe you could say if you haven't been hit and you discharge it, on a successful attack, they're stunned. And they actually get the stunned effect. So it's if you've been hit and you've been discharging and you hit someone and you want to discharge the last little bit, it's still the 1d4. But if you haven't been hit this round, your charge is it's like a taser. It's so powerful. It's the same damage, but because you're choosing to let it go instead of it being defensive, you're not holding anything back, right? The armor is holding back just enough to be defensive, but if you're not holding back and you let it all go at once, that's when you get the chance to stun them. And that gives you a chance to run away. Everyone else gets an advantage on their next attack. So it makes it more spicy without doing too much damage. It makes it worth the mage's time, because like I said, the mage thinks that they're in peril and they're going to get attacked, but this is the last guy. Like if they have multiple people around them, they want to keep the armor up. But if this is the last guy and the guy closes distance, he's like, nah, fuck that, stun, I'm out of here, and then just runs away. So that's maybe the direction I would head. Is I like the idea of being able to use it as an attack and stun them. But I think it's best as armor and not armor and attack, personally.
Okay. I'm gonna answer Cosmic's question real quick. He threw out a couple. I don't know. It says I hate.
Oh, he does. He hates to wait another 3 days for me to look at the backstory. We'll see if we can still get to it because I don't want to skip another day on the topic of weather because we skipped last week. But if we have a chance, I will read up on that one. And then if you're indoors, so what if you're indoors at the time of casting?
So I would not say that the bolt of lightning like strikes through. I would say it's more. I would say either it appears at the highest point above you, or it strikes through without damaging. Like it
gotcha. You can't use that part as an attack.
Yes, you're not Shazamming it.
And if the playing character is a bronze or blue dragon and they use the spell, can they add the spell's damage effect to their breath weapon?
I mean, honestly, I think there's nothing wrong with that. Like, just especially thematically as that type of entity.
Like it's almost just like a supercharge. It's like just an extra charge.
It feels thematically like it would totally work. So I personally, as a DM, would have no problem with that.
I think I think it would absolutely be, especially if we were allowing the discharge, especially with it being a dragon. A discharge through your breath weapon should just be about why not? Why wouldn't a dragon be able to do that?
I can see DM saying rules as written should be melee, but whatever.
Yeah, I think something like that is different. That's a shocking answer. All right, so what's the other one, and then we'll get to our
so last
topic.
one, super duper quick. It is called Super Sight.
Super Sight. Okay. I've heard a
So
lot of versions of sight
this
sight
one,
spells. So
I know everyone's gonna have a problem with. I even have a problem with it, and I loved the idea so much. I had to give it creation.
You had to give it creation.
I had to let it be because I needed to see it. I needed it to be play tested.
Okay.
That way. I needed it to be play tested.
So what is it?
It's called Super Sight. So it says your eyes become. It's a second level divination spell. Casting time 1 action, touch, so you can imbue it to other creatures. It's verbal and somatic. Concentration up to 10 minutes. Your eyes become white and your pupils disappear for the duration. You can see all things in a 60-foot radius as if you had eyes everywhere. So it's almost like omniscience. Like, you can see all things all at the same time. Like, imagine you have, like, security cameras everywhere.
That's interesting. So,
And so basically, it removes the issue of you need to have sight on something. You can see everything. If you're invisible, you're still invisible, but you can see like around corners, you can see under things, you can whatever.
So it's almost like I would actually call that fourth dimensional sight because essentially there's just you. The idea of like, imagine we look down on a 2-dimensional surface, we see everything. Basically, it's fourth dimensional sight. You just see the world as a top down almost but also in every angle. So, okay, so fourth dimensional sight. That alone, rephrasing it from that to a fourth dimensional sight, I can get more on board with. I have some Is that all that is? So I have reservations on it because what level?
It's a second level, and the upcasting is for every 2 levels above second you cast this spell, you can see an additional 15 feet.
See, I have problems. As a spell, it's fine because it's kind of like seeing visibility. In the right situation, all it's really doing for you is in combat. All it's really doing for you is removing obstacles. Like it's removing cover. Out of combat, it's kind of cheeky because it really lets you like find hidden stuff. But whatever. Which is why it's a little bit too OP for second level because you're basically being able to see things that no one else should be able to see. So I have a little bit of reservation for it being second level there. The other part, though, that I could find almost as if this was like a another concept I have played with, but I can't ever make quite work. But this reminds me of it is like cursed spells. So we all talk about cursed items, right? Items that have a boon but also have something wrong with them. Mm-hmm. Imagine spells that kind of work the same way. So I'm thinking about this almost like maybe this spell either has a constitution requirement or the constitution requirement's secret. So if it's a level 2, right? So that's the cursed part. It's a level 2, so it's enticing. Anyone can cast it. Go ahead. It's level 2. Go ahead, you can cast that. Right? So the cursed item looks appealing. So the cursed spell. But the idea is that it's omniscient. It's everything all at once, and you're just immortal. Imagine just knowing everything in this room instantly. Now imagine doing that for 60 feet around you. The fact that you would be so disoriented, I would think either A, what's your constitution? You can't cast the spell. Or just, oh, you're casting the spell. Cool. What's your con? Cool. And you just have a private table to where if you have less than a 13, you throw up. And you can't move. Or if you have less than a 10, not only do you vomit, but you go prone and you can't move for the duration of the spell because you are so disoriented. But if you have a high enough constitution, maybe you have to have a certain level of con to where not only can you handle it, but maybe you also have another one where it's like, do you have enough con/intelligence to use it? Like, so I'm just saying, like, this is where high point mentality would come in. I would say either A, it has to be upwards of like a level 4 or 5 spell, because again, that's a big bonus. But if you added a roll table or a constitution table, that right there, I think, could easily make this level 2 spell really fun because it's enticing. It brings people in. But if you don't know and you do this spell, you could literally knock yourself out for the duration of the spell because you're just...
When you said cursed spell, my brain went a slightly different direction. And I got a cool idea that I really feel like I want to implement to this, and I do want to keep it secret. But, and it occurred to me after you said fourth dimensional sight.
Mm-hmm.
Because that to me, like, when you really think about it, like, that makes a shit ton of sense, right?
Yeah, that's what they always try to talk about, is like, the fourth dimension is basically like, again, if you think about how we look at the world.
You use this spell, whenever you cast it, the longer you're in it, it's like wearing the Lord of the Rings ring. And now fourth dimensional beings
might come after you.
Like, now know of your existence. And the more you use it, the more they come, and who knows what these beings are, what their intentions
what's
are,
crappy is
whatever,
like after the 3rd time you use it, you start seeing them. And then after the 5th time you use it, one looks at you. And then every time you use it after that, you tell the player there is always one looking right at you. Wherever you are, whenever you use it, there it is. And then every time you use it, they've gotten closer. You never tell them what's going to happen, but you're just like, you don't know. But every time you use it, and then like maybe by the 10th time, there's one really close, and then there's another one. Then the next time there's another one. And eventually to the point to where they're like surrounded by them.
I want one time
that would be so cool.
That they use it and they're like looking around and they're like seeing all this stuff. Like, one of them like touches them, and then from the perspective of everybody else,
they disappear.
They disappear. So
I was thinking the same thing of actually, like, literally eventually they just are lost in the 4th dimension.
This same character, Glim, he showed me a game. Like, he is all into like these different computer games and mind-bending games. He showed me a game which is literally 4th dimensional Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
It is so crazy, like how.
Do you remember the name of this one? I know a couple of them.
I don't. I would have to ask him. But it was so cool to watch, like, how certain places of existence like disappear depending on where you go
and how you're looking at it and what angle. Yeah, a lot of the 4th dimensional games are really interesting, especially like or the superliminal games. Like, all of that stuff I like because it reminds me of things that I've tried to incorporate in D&D.
Oh my gosh! I said a 4th dimensional weeping angel. That is so
that's basically
horrifying.
Yeah, right.
It's so horrifying.
And then he says that when he thinks that the spell ends, you get blindness for 1 minute due to the overload of senses, or as part of the transition, the spell's effects the normal vision.
Like that consequence, especially like maybe it is a 2nd level spell, but maybe that's what happens. Like, it's a 2nd level spell, but like every time you come out of it, you're blinded for longer and longer and longer, as long as you cast it at 2nd level. But if you cast it at like a higher level, it won't have like those same kind of concepts.
Or it has worse concepts. Every time you upgrade it, continues to get even worse.
I mean, perhaps. But I mean, I want to, like, if you're going to use it at a higher level, I want it to at least be worth using. Otherwise, you're, like, wasting that whole spell unless you're just, like, trying to deter them from ever using it.
But then again, if you can start tying it into your world to where using it becomes oddly more beneficial, like maybe higher levels, the more you upcast it, maybe you can start seeing more things. Like at first it's just everything, and then it's just a wider net, and then maybe it's highlights magical items. Maybe then you start to see trapdoors and actually see hidden... Like maybe it's more than just the sight. It's first just surface level stuff, and then the sight, as you upcast it, it gets stronger, but you also become more noticeable in that fourth dimension. So I like it. I like it. That one, I think, for the pure thought concept, and I think I would not... I think I would make this either that cursed item. I think I would make it a cursed spell, or I maybe make this something that's obtainable but not common, like just something that you could adventure towards. So I'll give that one a 7. I could see that finding its way into high points somehow, not as is, but I like the idea.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. Well, that's all I had for now. I mean, there's plenty more.
Oh yeah, we'll have more time for that.
I would like to go over my druid subclass because
we also have to go over your samurai subclass someday.
that needs a lot more work.
That's what we're here for.
But yeah.
All right, so let's get into our topic, our actual topic. Now that we're done with the homebrew review, so
weather should.
Yeah, weather matters. So we had this on the topic for last week. Didn't get to it just due to the homebrew taking a little bit longer. But yeah, I wanted to briefly go over this topic at least because I wanted to talk about my experiences and my thought process with utilizing weather because I'm bad. I utilize it in the sense of when major seasons are happening and for backdrop and for pretty much just that, and even for regional stuff is when I use it. But an ever-changing weather system is kind of a bitch to keep track of, and it's hard not to use it situationally. But I wanted to talk about the different layers of using weather because I feel like there's a couple different ways at which it can be used, and there's no wrong way to use it, but talking about all the different ways I think can help get people to wrap their mind around like what is the best approach, right? And the way that I look at weather is you have a couple different things. You have the superficial approach, which is essentially either setting based, where you're just setting the backdrop. So you're in a if you're in an LA noir kind of campaign, right? A little one shot. It's going to be rainy. It's going to be dark. Everyone's going to be kind of creepy. Or if you're going to do a horror setting, if you're going to be in a horror setting, you might have it as a stormy night, right? So you have the superficial backdrop of either the location that you're at, or again, when I talk about, I do this superficially on when like major seasons happen. So if you're traveling enough and you go to a different area that has a different temperate climate, or time as in game has passed and now it's winter, we're going to give you the effect, the backdrop of it, but then we're going to move along with the game. And I'm bad at incorporating those effects of weather in the normal gameplay. But then you get past that superficial level, and then you actually have the interaction level, which is more along the lines of the out of combat, right? So, making sure that depending on what they're wearing, are they are your characters properly dressed for the occasion, right? Just more of the role play aspect, but still interactable, right? Making sure that's like, hey, if there's snow on the ground, can we actually throw snowballs, right? That actually has effects on the world. You can hit someone, the wrong person. Those are the kind of things that snow means water. Means that you don't ever have to find a water source. Like, depending on the type of gameplay you have, these are the interactable levels of it. Maybe making roads slippery, maybe making terrain harder, maybe making travel longer. And then, of course, you have the in-combat aspects, whereas these are more, I think, where you rarely see these the most, which is incorporating weather into combat. Whereas, are you taking into account that it's been raining and it's slippery or there's mud, right? And not just... are you making dex checks every now and again? But if you literally say, I'm dashing across the field, you should be making a dex check to dash across mud, right? That's not going to be your normal, solid footing. and depending on what kind of DM you are, I think that adding it into combat could be fun, but it also could just be a pain in the ass, right? To try to remember and, what are your mechanics? How often do people have to roll? Because if you have players who are going to use the environment, if you're in, a sandy area and they want to like pick up sand and throw it in, someone's face or whatnot, like, are you taking that into account when you're building that setting with the weather, right? Or is the weather something that's just there happening, or is it something that's affecting the encounter, right? If it's raining, does everybody have low vision? If it's like, you've seen those fight scenes in like some of those movies where they get like, trapped along the side of the road, but it's pouring down rain. You can barely, as the audience, barely tell what the fight's happening. And these guys are in cowls and shit. And I'm like, yeah, it's nice and it looks cool because it's all choreographed, but like, how hard that shit is to like see to not only see an attack coming in the pouring rain, but when your cowl's up because you're trying to keep dry, your ace, so doing that, right? Like having rain affect combat in terms of like, if it's heavy enough rain, maybe everyone should have a lower AC. Maybe maybe the AC should be lowered for everybody because it's not only difficult terrain, but it's also harder to see an incoming attack, right? So those are the kind of things that I've looked at in terms of the layering of how you use weather, and I'm really bad. I'm pretty much at that layer 1. I rarely use it, mainly because keeping track of it is one of those minute details that I typically just don't think about. I'm thinking about the people and all of the other stuff. The backdrop is not something that the main players that I play with care about, right? Like you and Vixie for pretty much don't really worry too much about the weather outside of the backdrop. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not beneficial to talk about.
That's an interesting point, because when I think about Davd and when he's interacting in the world, it's because it's hard to say that it isn't relevant because it isn't there, or because he wouldn't care.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay, so to what extent would, because I feel like a lot of, as we've talked about before, what the character's actually seeing and experiencing is very different than what the player's actually seeing and experiencing, right?
Right.
So they are, in character, going to be reactive to the real world that exists around them, the day and night, they're not going to have to ask the DM, hey, what time of day it is. They're going to be able to see the sun going down.
And depending on the type of DM that you are, like right. I like to take a lot of that. I let my players take for granted the fact that I don't focus on a lot of those details. How many DMs and how many players really care about like bathroom usage? How many of you actually really pay attention to how often you eat and drink water, hydrate in game? The survival aspects that we've come to know and hate in all survival games, right? Healing HP isn't about having a bandage and then using a bandage. It's about, I have HP, I either take a short rest or I take a healing potion, or someone has medicine, right? We've boiled down a lot of the things that, and this is why I find it interesting, the concept of D&D versus survival games, because there is a really unique factor where once you start to put in too much, D&D stops becoming D&D, right? Like if you had to keep track of every time you ate, right? It's one thing to say I buy enough rations to make this trip. It's different to actually call out how many rations do you have left, how many are you eating. Oh, you should eat a little bit more today because you guys had that encounter, so now you have to be careful. It's like no one wants to do that level anymore, which I think is why over the years, because that used to be important, that you go back to first edition, second edition, they're still there in the books, but they're not nearly as heavily relied upon in terms of successful campaigning. And I think that's like similar to weather, right? It can be useful, it can be used, but to the extent of who's really watching out for it. Mm-hmm. I think that's why a lot of the times it comes down to, it's great for a setting. If the setting is in the mountains and it's snowy and it's cold and that's how the setting is, it makes more sense when it's there and themed that way, which is kind of what I do. Like, if you're traveling through High Point and you go from Septim's Tier to Therengold, you're going to go through the mountains. You guys went through Pocket Watch. You guys went through the cold mountains right next to Pocket Watch until you got to the warmer valley. Then you guys traveled to the valley during the springtime. You got to see a lot of farms, at their height, right? Those are the kind of things that I like to do because, to me, it helps me set the setting, right? The time of year, the season, and the temperate area, that helps me set the setting of where you are and gives me an idea of the type of people. Like, that's what I mean by it's superficial. It gives me enough information to set the setting, but I feel like I could get a lot better at really honing in on how does that weather actually affect it. Like, and I don't mean like, oh, it's going to take 5 more days of travel, because let's face it, D&D does a really bad job at expressing how travel should work, in my opinion. Because it either turns out to be way too important and it becomes a mechanic that's more stressful, or it's basically just a non-existent point, right? Like most DMs don't.
There really is a hard balance to find a what feels like a uncumbersome travel system. Because
you're either doing encounters along the way or you're not, and I think that's really what matters, right? And when it comes down to it, like, if you're the DM and you're deciding when they do encounters, like, no one, like, you can't put so many encounters and a time limit on what they have to go do unless you're going to artificially make it at the last second. Like, then that's just a scripted storyline. But then you also don't want to make a timeline to where you guys have 2 weeks to make it, but you have to roll for encounters, which could slow you down. Some people don't like that kind of gameplay, and some people do, right? So maybe you do that aspect where those things can actually matter. But when it comes to traveling, for me, it's like, unless the encounters along the way are going to be enriching, I typically don't care. Unless it makes sense that in-game it's going to take a long time and it makes no sense that you won't have anything happen. But again, it's like, without having it being an enriching experience, the idea of travel... And how many DMs do you know that have 2 or 3 missions and the travel time alone will mean that you're not going to be able to complete 1 or 2 of them? Like, it's not a video game, right? Video games do that shit where you have to maybe decide, do you have enough time to go do this? But even video games rarely do that. You have all the time in the world to complete every side mission and every main quest. You know what I mean? And that's where, like, travel and weather kind of go hand in hand in this, where using it is either superficial, it's used as the backdrop and to explain things, or it's highly, it can be highly used, but I think both of them have the same difficulty, because being a DM, keeping track of the weather is already difficult enough. There really aren't a ton of weather mechanics already in D&D, right? Like, maybe difficult terrain and travel modifiers, but I don't know how many combat modifiers there are based off of weather. There might be just a single book per edition that goes into detail in a chapter. But
and even that, a lot of the stuff is created after the fact or by third parties.
Exactly. So, again, if you're gonna make a encounter happen on a frozen lake, that's a very special situation that can have special mechanics. But if you're gonna be in a location that, like, let's say in High Point, let's say you go to a place that I say rains all the time, there is no mechanic for me to look at to do that, and I don't want to create special mechanics for every time we sit down in game. But so what do? Do I ignore the fact that it rains? Do I just say, yep, it's raining, you're wet, and you guys are wearing cloaks and all of your warm clothes? Like, again, very superficial. But if travel doesn't matter, then telling you it takes longer to travel doesn't matter, right? So how do you enrich it? Do you want people to feel that just because it's raining and just because I said it's raining, therefore they have disadvantage in combat? That's not very balanced. But at the same time, it's also reality. So this is why I like this question of whether weather matters, because it can in the right situation, and I think it should in the right situation. I think the bigger topic is, does it matter outside of, again, does it matter outside of situation? Should it matter outside of, again, the campaign setting, or in an extreme case of an encounter, should weather matter? I think is where the question is, because it can be a benefit,
I think,
but should it be?
The way I look at it is, weather is like a tool that a DM has in their tool belt. And that tool can be used in a certain way to build certain things, right? Different welders use welding tools to weld things, and those you can create certain types of things that's what weather is. You can create a certain type of interaction, a certain type of immersion, a certain type of challenge for your players using weather. Now, the depth and the intricacy and all of that stuff also go into, like, you can have a drill, you can have a screwdriver, you can have all these different versions of the same tool that will inevitably get you this. Might be easier, might be more simple, it might just be clunky to use, whatever the case may be. How you craft your tool, how you choose to use your tool, I feel like the right tool for the right job is what people always say. And so the right job is the right play. Like, your players are your job.
Yeah.
Like, the people sitting down at this table are the job. So are the people you're playing with, are they going to really feel more immersed? Are they going to feel benefited? Are they going to feel...
Is it going to be, like what I was saying, I like the enriching environment.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Is it going to enrich the experience?
Are they going to feel enriched by what you're bringing? And I think...
So here's like a good example, I think, of what you're saying, too. Because one of my favorite examples, like, again, why I think I lean towards the superficial use and only pull it out when, like, in the extreme case, right? Like, if it's storming, if it's a blizzard, if you're going into an extreme environment. I think why I do that, because A, it's easier instead of trying to keep track of like a moving weather system, but I think it also portrays to like some of my favorite experiences from my past as gaming. Like, I remember one of the ones that made the most sense to me, and the one that kind of really got me thinking about weather the very first time, because I've been in a lot of gaming sessions where different weather was explained, but it never really came about, you know, unless, like, again, like, it could be raining, so I could use a puddle to my advantage in combat, but that was like me pulling that out, right? But one of the ones that I really enjoyed was we were traveling through a desert, and we had to go through for a while, and there was a chance to, you know, run into different encounters. But one of the aspects that we had to deal with was nobody could wear metal armor because it would be too hot. So all of us traveling had to be in leather or cloth armor. So every encounter was a complete unique experience while we were on this trip. And this is kind of like when I talk about, like, you know, it can be superficial.
Did you never run into any enemies?
Oh, no, we did. We had to fight. We had many encounters, and our main fighters had to basically learn what it was like to not... I mean,
like, did you ever fight any people in this area that were wearing leather armor?
Leather or cloth, yeah. Most of them were in cloth, but none of them were in metal armor.
Okay.
But yeah, so the idea, like, this is where the idea is, like, so, you know, when you talk about, like, superficial is just when you talk about it in the background and it never plays a part. I like the idea of this, like, you know, when you're traveling through a very specific area, make the area feel themed, make it feel specific. Whereas, again, keeping track of, like, oh, okay, it's going to rain for the next 3 days, so I have to keep in mind everything you guys do for the next 3 in-game days is raining. That's where I think it becomes too pedantic. Yeah. But keeping in mind, if you just say it's raining outside, that's no big deal. You don't really got to talk about much. Like, you could just say it's raining to set the mood. That's fine. But really, I think what it comes, you know, a good example is, like, if it is raining and you're just saying it's a light sprinkle, then fine, no one cares. But if you're, like, making an intent to say it's pouring, make all combat have everybody have a -2 AC. You know what I mean? Make it feel like it matters other than the backdrop. Again, when you're in the desert and you're traveling through the desert, no one gets to wear metal armor. Otherwise, you're going to be too hot, you're going to be too dehydrated, and you can't fight in it because you're going to, you know, be too exhausted by the time the fight's over. If you're traveling in the cold, you know, same thing. Maybe metal armor makes you colder, so you have to make sure that you wore beefier stuff, but maybe that makes you slower.
Or I know that they have certain armor with those... certain metal armor has that I forget what it's called, that under leather layer in between you and them, so that the actual physical metal isn't touching you. Yeah, so
or like Gambison or something like that.
I think that's what it's called.
And and then it, you know, again, so it's like all of these situations where it's like, you know, you could use these to be more dynamic with your encounters and even just with your gameplay, right? Like certain situations could make, like, you could technically say that, if it's raining, if you come to a region that's very wet, maybe make sneaking harder for anybody in metal armor, because your metal is going to be more, it's going to start to rust, it's going to start to squeak a little bit. Maybe make that. Maybe after they leave, maybe make their armor all have a -1 AC until they go get it fixed up, because now it's all kind of crappy. So there's a lot of, again, making people run slower. Like, let's say if you're making a point to say it's a heavy downpour and someone has the wrong kind of armor, make them slower because they're now drenched in water. Make it harder for them to do a certain activity because they're literally, like they're encumbered by the environment. And these are where I am not great, but when I do these things, I feel like I'm good. I just don't do them often enough. I want to do things like this more. Make the weather feel impactful without making it feel like a chore.
I definitely like the idea. Of, because my only problem is, like, okay, you have been traveling with a group of adventurers. They just got to level 10.
Mm-hmm.
And their next mission takes them through the desert. The paladin just finished going through this dungeon, and he got the armor of his god.
Right.
But it's metal armor. So now, we gotta either leave the paladin behind, or he's gotta take off his armor and not wear it.
Until you're out
of this desert, and who knows how long that's going to take, and who knows how valuable he's going to be, not being the tank anymore. Like, I don't want to say that, like...
But if it's only temporary, I do kind of like, again, like what we learned in that desert trip was kind of it was almost like a mini role reversal. So those that were the tanks couldn't be tanks anymore. Like, they still had high hit points, but the people that fought, like the encounters we were fighting
they were more squishy.
Well, and they were used to fighting people without armor. So all of the weapons were designed to go against people without armor, which our tanks were not normally used to that, right? But all of us other ones who usually put distance and do all of our stuff, we were much more comfortable because we're like, oh no, this is another Tuesday. Back up, like. So that was the cool thing, is like in certain situations, yes, it would kind of suck, but it's that whole thing of like, but this is testing your patience. Your god is testing your patience. You did finally find the thing you want, and what is the whole point of paladins is to give up, right? Their mortal desires. So if he is that upset about getting it, good. Your god's testing you. Now deserve it by not wearing it until you get out of here, right? I mean, imagine doing that too. Like, imagine like putting like, I mean, that could be a custom quest for a paladin. Make him go get something, but put it somewhere where it can't be used until he gets out. So make him traverse to get it and then fight his way out without using it, and now you've earned to use it, or now you've earned the right for it. Like, so many different ways that I like D&D how you can spin things, but. Yeah, when it comes to weather, man, like, it's hard.
Yeah.
But I would challenge myself. I would challenge any DM to try to include, not encounter-specific situations, but try to include a themed campaign or a themed side story or a themed area, just a region that they have to travel through. Theme it and have fun with the theme. If you're going to make it snowy...
Like,
make them all wear heavy stuff and then slow down their movement to, like, instead of 6 squares, maybe they get -10 to all their movement because they're bulky. Unless they have a certain strength. And then, if they're like, they're big guys, whatever. Maybe make it to where, again, maybe they have less AC if the situation, or maybe they can't use certain items in a certain situation. It's really fun when you can lean on the setting to really set a new parameter, right? Again, it's too hot, so you can't hold any metal. So anybody holding metal. So hey, if you're the monk with the staff, you're cool. But everybody else holding metal, nope, ain't happening.
It's basically like heat metal's perpetually on.
Yeah. So just anything that you can do, because that's I think that's the way that I like to approach weather. Is instead of making weather more feel real, add it as a layer or an obstacle.
Imagine that with Cosmic's robe of elemental absorption.
Oh yeah.
bro, give me all your metal, bro. Give me all your metal. He just sits there absorbing all the heat damage and just... He's the new tank. It's true role reversal.
I'm telling you, it would work.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, I think it's weather is just one of those things, man, where it's like I think it's important. I think it could be. I think it's underutilized, but I think the reason it's underutilized is kind of like what we were talking about. It's underutilized because it feels like such a learning curve. Because again, it feels like it's either going to be too pedantic, like too detailed, or it's just going to be too much of a chore. But I think that a good medium is to structure not just the backdrop, but structure the environment around the weather, just for like a setting, right? Mm-hmm. And see what people do with that. You know, again, let's say if it's a really rainy area, but it's not always raining. So you have times of rain, which could maybe muffle sounds, maybe make people harder to see. But then during the times of not rain, maybe it's harder to sneak because there's puddles and water everywhere. Your footprints are everywhere, right? So you can make this dynamic situation where if you have a rogue in the party and you send him somewhere, make the place always wet. So sneaking around's harder for him. So he has to use the party more. You know what I mean? Like you could use the weather to be the obstacle that you don't want the enemy to be, or you don't want to Deus Ex Machina out to make a challenge for the player.
It's something that's universal. You know, if the players have to deal with it, then the enemies have to deal with it. But
exactly.
They were likely a little bit more attuned to, a little bit more used to it because it might be their native environment. But still, it feels a little bit more...
Well, and think about how much fun you can have with that. I mean, imagine coming into a place where basically metal's almost useless because it's too hot, so everyone uses whips.
That would be kind of...
That's a huge encounter for you that you've never encountered. I mean, what DM outside of that situation would literally...
Just a whole crew full of whips.
Can you imagine, though, how awesome that encounter would be? Especially imagine they all had a feat where they could disarm with their whip. So imagine the first thing they do is just disarm you. Like... It's just one of those things. These are the things that I like to do and I don't do enough of. So that would be my challenge on bringing weather into your game is, you know, use it as your backdrop, use it as your setting and as like your environment, but then go one step further and make that environment the challenge.
For sure.
In fact, I don't want to get too much into it, but in the Old Gods campaign, the second island is very much that situation of the weather is the challenge.
Interesting.
So, because it's the stormy island that no one ever goes to because there's a perpetual storm.
Oh, that's right.
So the weather, like I'm pulling off that is like the weather is the challenge, right? It's you're not going up against an enemy, you're going up against how nature works and can you traverse it. So, those are some ideas for how to make weather more useful. Is look at what you don't always have to go to the extreme, but look to the extreme for ideas, right? So again, the desert, right? If you want hot, arid climate, well, imagine the hottest desert and then imagine the most difficult things you could do in the desert, right? You're not saying that this is what I'm going to make happen, but you're looking to that to go, okay, in the desert, lots of armor, meaning lots of clothes would be hard to wear because you overheat. Certain items would be hard to touch. Distances would be hard to travel without lots and lots of water. People need lots and lots of water, right? So you start to look at those extremes, look to those for inspiration, and then go, okay, so if there's a region where people can live, but, you know, maybe all food and water is 3 times as expensive here. Really make the party have to, like, work for it because they're poor. You know what I mean? You have to look towards the extreme to get inspiration for not the extreme, right? Raining and wet means that, you know, nothing's ever dry, right? So you could do things like, I mean, again, depending on how pedantic you want to be, like maybe characters could lose things due to mold if they're not careful. You know, because everything's wet and nasty. Or, you know, maybe they get caught because they're smelly. You know what I mean? They leave this area now. They're like, there's things that you can do to not force the extreme conditions,
right,
but use those extreme conditions to be like, oh, but what's a milder version of that?
Okay.
All right. So to end it, we're doing pretty good. So to end it, let's check out this backstory real quick that Cosmic sent me, and then we'll call it a day.
Yes. Let us hear this. Cosmic, are you in the chat? It's coming down right now.
Window capture. Let's do that guy. boom.
Bada bing, bada boom.
No, it's just gonna be a jerk. I don't know how to. I wanted to make this like. Oh, actually, maybe what I can do is do this. Ah, that's a little better. Not great, but we'll use it for now. Oop, PC cam. There we go. Okay, so we have. This is the backstory for Bolero. Bolero. All right, and I forget. This is his tiefling character. Okay. Trying to remember. I don't remember off the top of my head everything about this particular character, so we will hopefully we'll be able to piece it together through the backstory. Okay, so we have Bolero. So when Bolero was around 7 or 8, he wandered away from his tiefling clan's cave. After seeing a nearby forest and getting lost within it, a dryad noticed him and started spying him, making sure he wasn't going to harm the forest. After a while, the dryad decided to help him find his way back to his home cave. Every now and again, he would visit the dryad out of curiosity, and eventually they became friends. The dryad taught Bolero 3 things over the course of the next several days. So first off, he taught Bolero how to speak common. Taught him how to listen to the music / voices of nature, like the wind blowing through the trees and such. Typical druid or ranger type of thing. So just being more in tune with nature and being able to kind of get a sense of their environment. And then this is the thing that he struggled with the most, both in terms of understanding and doing. So communing with nature and really getting into it was going to be his biggest struggle. And then the third thing that he went over is how to make the wooden musical instruments, starting with the flute via hollowed out sticks, all the way up to a harp / lyre using thin vines mixed with spider threads for added durability as the strings, and then eventually a violin. And this was over the course of 3 or 4 years, so it makes more sense that he was able to do all of this over time. And then the dryad was basically bringing out Bolero's inner bard. So this is kind of the origin story. And I love this concept of an origin story because not a lot of people consider that, right? A lot of people think of their character just being born like that. Mm-hmm. But I love those ideas of being able to have one path and then have the other path inspired. Like I did that with all of my rogue characters. Usually I don't just say they're just rogues. Like usually they don't start out that way. Like Dice, the very first character, after growing up just trying to survive, he ended up being taught how to live on the streets, but didn't end up becoming a thief, but just learned that as a aspect. So even though he was a rogue and a thief as a class, it wasn't out of desire. It was more of, I learned these skills to survive, and now I keep these skills as if I ever need them. But I didn't necessarily take that persona of, I just pickpocket everyone.
Right.
It was a time of my life and a skill set I learned, but it wasn't a definition of who his character was.
Right.
So I love this kind of concept of making a backstory where his aspects are being brought out of him. Especially by a mentor. So really like that idea. So after they were bringing out the inner bard, so one evening Bolero went to visit his dryad friend like normal to continue working on the violin. He noticed a group of humanoid creatures he had never seen before, ranging from humans, kobolds, dragonborns, and goblins. Does not sound like this is going to end well. All of which were wielding different types of axes. Behind them were parts of the forest they had chopped down as both firewood and building materials for their own village. Bolero could assume, based on their direction, that they were heading to his dryad friend's part of the forest, next putting her in danger. Being a tiefling, he naturally frightened the humans and goblins of the group, but the dragonborns and kobolds weren't so easily scared away. A fight ensued, and after a fight without a weapon to defend himself, he got beaten pretty badly. Oddly, his dryad friend did not bother to come help him in his time of need. While on death's door, so essentially making his death saving throws, and as a last-ditch hope to stop the lumberjacks from cutting down his friend's tree, He cast Firebolt for the first time. But due to his lack of control, his injuries, and lack of aiming, the spell hit the tree instead. Despite being a cantrip, the lumberjacks still fled like cowards. So was enough to scare them away of Tiefling throwing fire. Before losing consciousness, Bolero could hear the Dryad's angered voice through the flames. When he woke up, nothing but a burnt stump remained of his friend's tree. Surprisingly, the flames had not spread to any other trees. He decided to uproot what was left of the Dryad's tree stump, bring it home, and use it to craft a new instrument. After trial and error, he eventually succeeded in making it into a drum. After explaining what had happened to his parents, his father magically enchanted it, making it into a rhythm maker's drum. Then proceeded to kick him out of the clan for compromising their cave's location. And invoking the wrath of other dryads within the forest, screwing up a deal his clan had made with them to keep their cave hidden in return for protecting the forest from creatures that would seek their sacred woods, which was made before he was born. So makes sense, just. Yeah. Traditional teenager shenanigans. So after being kicked out of his clan, he wandered around from settlement to settlement, practicing both his spells as a natural-born but newly realized wizard, as well as a bard, who uses... And again, I love that aspect of fire. The firebolt was more of a reaction, and then he learned he could use magic. I love those little details. I love that instead of just, I always knew I could do magic. Let's see. So he wandered around from settlement to settlement, practicing both of his magic as a wizard and a bard, who uses the movements and sounds of fire as an inspiration for his bardic music. Now I remember this character. He had this fascinating concept. So it's a bard, right? But he told me about this like 2 or 3 months ago, but he was like talking about how he built this character around how he made his music. And he told me about he's a tiefling, but so he gets a sheet of music, right? But what he does to write his music is he will sit there in front of his fireplace and watch the flames dance. And the flames will indicate, like he'll hold up his sheet of music.
That's where the notes
and
go.
He'll write his song based on the dancing flames.
Wow.
Such a dope ass idea.
That's kind of fire.
I ended up showing him on that stream. I ended up showing him that one Instagram site that takes pictures. And draws pictures with musical notes and then plays it.
Oh, that's cool.
I even Cosmic, if you're still here, so we watched that on my stream. We watched like one or two of the things I was showing Cosmic. Like, this is what you thought you reminded me of, and he was like, "Man, I wonder if that person will ever do like a fireplace one, like just ever do something like that." And so I actually commented on the video that we were watching. I said, "Hey, like, would you ever do non-animals?" And they actually commented back and said they're working on it. Like, they're actually... So, I need to go... Actually, you know what? Maybe I can go check back... I forget. What was that called?
Remind me. Do we have a channel in our Discord?
We don't have a meme channel yet, but we should have one.
Okay.
Um,
Let's see if I can post something. Because I saw this video on TikTok earlier. It was the coolest thing that I'd ever seen. It was rain drumming. Some people had like left drums out in the rain. And
Interesting.
left it underneath certain places, and like the cacophony of like the raindrops hitting these drums was like one of the sickest things I've seen. It was pretty fire. I gotta post it.
Man, I can't remember what that YouTuber was called. I should be able to go. I'm pretty sure I should be able to go to my history though, and find them because I don't watch YouTube on this channel. There it is. Found it right away.
Dope.
So let's see if he's done it anytime recently. No, so we don't have... I don't care about your damn ad. Okay, this is just you talking. So the most recent one... No, that's 2 years ago. His most recent one of 2 weeks ago was still of a cat. Still a cool concept, though. So I don't
That's
have this.
crazy. That's crazy.
I don't have this available to see for everyone to see. Can I get the web capture to work? Alerts, no. Oh, there it is. So yeah, so this is an idea that I think Cosmic and I were talking about before. So this is someone who takes images, and obviously like, this is an image of a cat, and they make music out of it. So they drew the entire image with musical notes, and then they play it. So this is kind of like what he does, but he doesn't draw the fire, but he uses the fire to like signify where the notes go.
And it would be similar to how. So is that going from top to bottom, or is everything playing?
It's like it's an orchestra. So watch this.
From one side of the page to the other.
Yeah. So check this out. So let me. There we go. Desktop audio. It's a whole orchestra.
I see some of the notes being played.
It's so fascinating. They have so many of, I mean, like they don't have a ton, but like you can see here, like they just have some of these like dope looking images. So here's one where they're gonna go line by line. So they'll go like different sections of the dog instead of all of it at once.
Right.
So each one's kind of different, but the whole image just looks so dope.
That's so crazy.
I mean, I can't even imagine how long it takes for like each one of these to go through. I mean, like they're just, there's so much.
That's so crazy, man.
And it's like they're so unique too, because you have like this one where it's like a cat laying down, right? And why does it look like the music that you would expect to listen to watching a cat sleep? Like,
100%.
yeah. So this is what I think of when he talks about this like character in a way. But yeah, so let's see. So he uses his so this is where he says he uses the movements and sound of fire as inspiration for his bardic music. So as he's listening and watching the fire, he's writing out these musical notes for his bard music. He became a bounty hunter with the goal of finding and killing the lumberjacks that caused the chain of events that led him to his abandonment and eventual discovery, and who knows what else of his clan. Bolero later learned the common phrase for fire. So Bolero later learned the common phrase for fire as Bolero and adopted it as his bounty hunter name, as not to forget his goal or the loss of his dryad friends. So his original name was not Bolero, but he took on that name as a reminder and as a humility of.
It's his gamer tag.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then I do like that though. Again, all those layers of building your character's story. I like that. And then before meeting the party in the city of Sharon, in the Stonehold of Archipelago, he was following leads that a few of the lumberjacks from all of those 20 to 21, based on his age of 33 years ago. So he's still 20 years he's been looking for these people, but he found out that he had found some details about them, that they had joined a terrorist pro-war group known as the Emerald Claw. And that's where their story begins. So he's joined the party with this history and joined the party with this goal of finding these lumberjacks, finding out that they're these terrorists. So he has this whole side agenda that could pull the entire party into all of this.
Interesting.
It's a really cool backstory. Again, these are the things that I really like that he does. Is it's not just I lost my friend and I found my powers, so this is what I do. Like every layer is built all the way from him taking his name to the origin story. He built that up very nicely, where he had a build up friendship, wrongful circumstances, and I'm sure that there's more to that. Could like as a DM for myself, I would have a whole story unbeknownst to him of the Dryad's point of view. Does the Dryad actually hate him? That would be a choice that he has to decide whether the Dryad actually hates him. like whether or not, like, again, if he ever goes back to his home and finds out what really happened between the two clans, like all of that is so much more fun for the DM too to play around with.
I very much love that. I'm actually curious because during COVID times, I dove hard into the online D&D world, and so
I think we all did.
A lot of those things, they require you to submit like a request to like join a group.
Yeah.
And usually part of that is a portion of your backstory for your character. And so every single time I created one, I got way too into it, and so I created like pretty deep backstories, but like they're just characters that I want to play eventually that are kind of just sitting there.
I think the problem with most DMs is like those big complicated backstories, I think, are just like, I don't think most DMs, and we've talked about this, really incorporate the player into the realm. Like they let players and characters play in the realm, but they're not of the realm. And that's the thing. I think that's one of the things that makes my realm as appealing as it is for some people, is the fact that I try my hardest to make your existence in my realm basic from day one. Like, you're not just here now interacting with what I've created. I'm actually changing the history to make sure that you are of this world and the world knows you, right? Like, people have met you. Like, it boggles my mind to imagine just poofing into existence and having a backstory that isn't actually part of the world you live in, right? And that's just something that I like to do. I know it's not easy. I'm not saying that everyone has to do it, but when I see it done like this, especially on a player trying to help their DM, like, I look at this as a player really trying to give their DM as much fuel for this, as well as also just making a really solid, like, story and a character to follow. Because I find that when you make a good backstory, especially if you make it layered like this, where he's basically writing in his motivations, his flaws, like all of those things that D&D tried to add to character creation, which I'm not a huge fan of, because it's like,
it's just, it feels forced a lot of the times.
It's making the process of creating a character too defined by options and not enough by the story. Whereas, like, again, choosing, benefits and choosing, like your what are they called, like,
racial features and your
not even the backstory stuff, like
features.
like your flaws, like 3 main flaws, 3 main ethos, like all of that is nice, but when you boil it down to just those options, you're thinking of them as individual pieces, right? Instead of looking at how do these all play. So when you make a backstory like this, and you're really looking at, what is my motivation? Well, it's revenge. Well, why is it revenge? Well, I had a good friend that I screwed over, but it was because someone else, like, I like this idea because you never get confused on where to take your character at that point. Yeah. Instead of just having a laundry list of, technically I'm unethical and I am a gambler, but my biggest issue is this, but I really like my friends. It's almost like you're trying to justify everything, whereas if you have a backstory like this, it's like, no, dude, these are the guys that hurt my friend. I don't care about you right now. That's been my life goal for 20 years.
I think a lot of people don't, like, they have those things for people who don't know how to do this. And I think the heart behind creating it was to develop inspiration for people to, like, jump off of and be like, oh, here's an archaeology background. Oh, I could put that into my backstory. I could be an archaeologist. I could have had X, Y, and Z. Like, this person's talking about, like, hey, I had depth, I had reasons. You're supposed to take that and then use it as a reason. If I don't know, what kind of flaws should I use? Oh, here's an example of a couple of flaws. All right, well, you take this flaw, but you don't just take it and be like, slap it on your character like a sticker.
Right.
You actually incorporate it. You, like, you're supposed to breathe life into it. And, like, that's why, again, a lot of the times when I'm going through the book and, like, I've already built a character outside of whatever's here in the book, and I'm just trying to go to the book to find what fits with what I've already built.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, it sucks sometimes where I feel like, oh, I have to choose something that exists here, but even now they've created, like, custom lineages and, like, other things that you can do to just basically, like, cookie cutter build your own.
But does it make sense when you're playing the character, or are these all just details that sounded good or were a means to an end, because there's two different types of character building, right? There's the whether you want to call it min-maxing or analytical build, or just, again, if you're trying to go for what the means to the end kind of build, right? So I chose this background because it got me this, and then I chose this flaw because it does this. That's going to be a harder character to, again, if you're the kind of person who wants to play your character, if you want to play how your character would think, it's going to be harder because you're not building a character that makes sense. You're building a character that you want the end result. Whereas when you build like this, it's every step of the way. It's like there's no question about what my character is doing.
The other side of that is when you're doing those things, like we talked about the other day, a lot of what you're building because it makes sense. Like, hey, I'm choosing these feats. I'm choosing to be proficient in athletics because I'm a fighter, because a lot of my training has to do with this stuff. Like, for me, it's not necessarily about min-maxing, but it is about synergy. Like, if I am absolute shit at stealth, but, like, I'm really good at my investigation and my history's high because I'm a wizard and because those are the things I'm good at, like, I'm going to want to pick and pile things that are synergistic with that stuff, because that's likely how my character would think. You know what I'm saying? Those are likely the things that they're going to be geared towards. And so even though, I'm building aspects of my character to work well, it's not like, hey, I want this just so that I can be an uber mage, or I want this just so I can smash all the things. It's like, hey, I want a character that makes sense. I want a character that, like, follows a logical path.
Especially when you look at, playing off, the backstory and the build playing off of each other, because I think we had this conversation the other day too, where it's like, it's not just, it's like, I always find it funny when someone builds a character that they don't play, like they're building a powerful mage, but then they try to be stealthy, right? It's like they have an idea of a build, but not how their gameplay is. But there's also the idea of, like, if you really want to, like, learn a way that I helped learn, like, how to play the character, how to build a character based on the play style, is, again, learning from the idea that you're building a character off of, like, what's on paper, like, you're with all of that knowledge, but look at those aspects of how it would have affected the character, because certain things that you do, you can ask yourself, am I good at this because of what I do, or do I do it because I'm good at this, right? So do I like fighting because I'm strong, or am I strong because I fight a lot? That kind of, like, I use that when building a character, right? Because when you're using that, you're also helping build that character backstory. Because if you're building a fighter, that's great. But using that idea of, do I want high strength because I'm a fighter and I need strength for these prerequisites? Or do you go the route of, I like all these prerequisites, which would have made me strong, so I should make strength my highest stat. And that could, like what you were saying, helps you bring the two sides together more evenly, even if you don't have a full character mind, like a full build in your mind. The idea of, like, well, what feat should I take? Well, what's your best stats? Well, you can either go, well, what feats will complement the stats, or what stats would lead to a different feat, like what you say. I'm stealthy, or I'm not stealthy, so don't take, I'm not stealthy because I don't have a high dex, or do I not have a high dex because I never try to be stealthy? But if you say, well, I'm not stealthy because I don't have a high dex, well, that's great. So use that mindset for everything else, right? Like, build the character as a complete set.
I think also doing things like this help you to, again, not create an idea of a character you want to build, but create a concrete character that exists and then just play that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people are like, hey, at level 10, I'm going to multi-class. And I'm like, where's your character going to be at level 10? Are they going to be in a place where they want to multi-class?
Yeah.
Are they going to want to make a deal with some warlock somewhere just so that they can have the ability to see in magical darkness? Like, what's actually going to take this person where they're going? And I think a lot of the times, for me at least, when I start asking myself, okay, when I think about this character, like, I love it when this happens and I'm in game, and I know you've heard me say this, is like, I'm really upset at my character right now.
Oh yeah, doing what your character's gonna do, and you as a
I'm
player know
mad
better.
Because I know you're about to do something that I don't want you to do, or whatever the case may be. It's like I want, like, you let your character be the guide to the choices that they make. Like, if my character has just been through a string of bad guys getting away over and over and over again, but last time I was like, yo, I'm taking the tavern brawler feat so I can do X, Y, and Z. Nah, bro. I'm taking the Sentinel feat. Because now every time they try to leave my blast radius, oh, bam, you coming right back here. And, like, that's going to be, like, their mindset, their mentality. And now they're building their kit for the real world that exists in
And it's also so funny when players build their character for a higher level, and it's like, you don't know your other players yet. So you're building a solo play. Like, you know, they talk about, like, oh, at level 10, I'm taking this because at level 15, I want this because at level 20, this is what the build I want. I'm like, is that going to work with the other players? Well, this shit doesn't matter. I'm like, yeah, it does. It will absolutely matter when you're level 20.
I've been so excited to, like, use some weapon combo. I got, like, blind fighting, and I got fog cloud. And I'm like, yo, every time I'm just going to run in the middle of the enemies, I'm going to drop fog cloud, and I'll beat everybody up. Everybody else that does any type of range can't see the enemies now.
Well, anybody, period. Like if they're all ranged, they're screwed. If they're all next to the enemy, they're screwed. Like, no matter what, the moment you cast Fog Cloud, you're the only one benefiting from the situation.
Like the whole mentality, like, oh, this is gonna be so good. And I'm like, no, it was trash.
But if everybody else synergized with it, if everybody else had, like, again, if that would have been early on, like, hey guys,
the Druid
like
had fairy fire, and they could just.
Fairy fire, or some people had thermal vision. Like, if there were ways that everybody could pre-plan to where it's like, no, that fog cloud, that smoke bomb, hell yeah, we all can benefit from it. But when you say, guys, I have this cool ass build and nobody else builds around you, your build kind of sucks, because you can't build to be the superhero of the team. That's not how the encounters are going to work for you. And if you are trying to do that where you're min-maxing for a specific build, it's like, especially for me as the DM I am, you can keep on doing that all you want, but I'm going to make the game shit for you, because not because I want you to have a bad time, but it's like, if you're going to really waste my time building something that isn't even in use yet and you're just ignoring what's happening to you, then I'm going to let you basically walk in the opposite direction that you need to go to make that character build of yours beneficial. Like, I'm not going to give you an easy way to go be that powerful mage that wants to throw around fire all the time. Like, guess what? I'm going to let you accidentally walk into the pits of hell and realize everything's immune to fire here. Like, if you weren't paying attention to the storyline because you were like, I want to be the greatest fire mage ever, and I'm like, but you ignored the fact that you took a deal with a demon that sent you to hell? Where's that fire helping you, buddy? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that you have to trash your idea, but like you said, go with the flow of your character, not with the end game idea, because that end game idea is just that. It's an end game idea, but who knows if the storyline, if the party is even going to make it there. Like, how many people have died at level 7 with a level 20 build in mind? What was all of that for? And then I'm not a huge fan of doing, like, people are like, oh, I'll just do it again. Like, so you're just going to play the same 7 levels just to hopefully get to level 20 this time? I personally can't play like that. I personally cannot do the thing where I make the same build every time until I get it. No. Like, it's got to be custom, man. It's got to be a unique experience based on a lot of factors.
I will say I have rebirthed a couple of characters, because the first time I played it, like, I got TPK the first time I pulled out, like, one of my characters in an actual serious game. And it was, like, the second or third session. It was because one of our party members wanted to be cheeky and wolf out and kill a kid. And they thought that the rest of us as party members were just going to be okay with that. And we're just going to be like, oh, no, it's fine. You just get, oh, the kid was working with the bat. Bruh. Like, this not... Alright, whatever. You know,
I hate players.
I hate some players. But you know what I'm saying? So it's like, there'll be some times where I'll like Venla. You know Venla from the Orc Discord, right? But Venla had another origin before that. Like, I rebirthed her in there because the original, and her backstory was different because the backstory I created for you worked and fit within your world and your realm.
Right.
The other one was more. It was just different.
Yeah.
Right. But so I think that no matter what happens, like, yeah, I'm not gonna just revamp it just so that I can create this one true vision that I have. But you know.
But if it's but if it's an idea that you are fond of and you don't really feel like you got a chance to actually play it, that's one thing. I'm just talking about the people who are like, nope, this fighter mage build, I'm running it again because I only got to level 10 this time and they died. So I'm running it again, because they want that build. They want that to work out. And it's like, then just make a level 20 character. Just say fuck it and make the final character. Why even bother? Why bother wasting the time to level up to something that you've already pre-planned? Just make that character and find a DM who will run that high-level game. Because to me, the exploration and like getting to like, I don't know. I don't see fun in doing all the research, knowing what every feat, everything I will do at every level. How is that fun leveling up? You already know what every level is going to do. There's no mystery. There's no like. Again, you're just
towards anything really.
You're basically there to say that you did something cool looking or sounding because you planned on putting it in. Because you see those players where it's like the moment they get that new feat, they're like, I can't wait to use this feat. Like, and they're always the ones who are like, I use this feat. Wasn't that cool? And it's like, but you didn't even enrich the encounter. You just said you used the feat. Like, you didn't actually like incorporate it. You thought it sounded cool and you want the props for having decided because it sounds cool, I did it. Whereas that's a lot different to me than like again, looking at Doft, right? It's one thing to have a build and be like, oh yeah, it's so cool that, I'm an earthbender and like, I could throw rocks around. But that to me is like, okay, yeah, you've planned that for like 5 levels and yay, now you can throw rocks. Like, you didn't do anything with it. Mm-hmm. Whereas with Dovd, learning piece by piece of like, well, what can I do with my power? Instead of thinking about what I think I should be able to do with it, let's play with it and learn what Dovd would do with it. And that's come to, I think, a lot more unique ideas of how to use it and opened up a lot more opportunities than just, well, I planned it out and these are the powers that I want to be able to use because they sound cool in an encounter. And that's, I don't know, that's, I think, again, just a different type of gameplay. I think it's not a gameplay I understand, and it's not a gameplay I do. Which is probably why I like being a DM more than a player, because everything is just constant creation.
Right.
All right, well, unfortunately, we didn't hear from Cosmic, so I hope you were here, Cosmic, to hear your backstory review, or at least your read over. If you weren't, you'll be able to catch it later. I think that's going to be it for us. So we're going to call it here. Thank you, Cosmic, for joining us and for giving us the backstory to read through. If you missed it, or if any of you missed anything from this stream, or if you want to catch any of our other streams, you can catch everything that we've done so far on our YouTube channel at MisfitGamersStudios, or you can catch us live Mondays and Thursdays for D&D discussions at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where we talk about all things D&D. And you can catch me on the weekends doing pop-up games. I mainly do RPGs. Right now I'm doing Cyberpunk. I do a little bit of Shadows of Doubt and Baldur's Gate. I'm doing a nice playthrough and an evil playthrough whenever Lucifer is available. And I just started playing DBD, Dead by Daylight, on stream as well as a killer. I'm having a little bit of fun with that. Not quite my normal, because I wanted to keep most of it RPG related, keep it D&D related. But I do play games and I do like having fun. So if you want to join me on that, check me out on the weekends. I'll just kind of pop up every now and again. We also have a Discord, if you could just pop that into chat real quick. So if you want to interact with us off stream, if you want to give us advice or topics to talk about, if you have questions about D&D that you want to hear us answer on stream, or you just want to just know what we would say and you don't want to wait till the next stream, join our Discord. We just popped it up in the chat. Come join the community, give us ideas of what you want to hear us talk about, or just come chat with us about D&D stuff normally. Otherwise, that's going to be us for today. I will be back on Thursday. I'm probably going to do another maybe Origins of High Point. I'm not exactly sure what else I'll talk about. I might change that up, though. I'm not 100% sure. Thursdays might even just be changing in general. But until then, that's going to be us. Mondays and Thursdays for D&D discussions are still going on until further notice, though. So, other than that, I hope you guys have a great start to your week. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will catch you on Thursday.